Thanks.
So I'll tell you about the agenda as soon as I figure out who's here and who's not.
Okay. Christina Brown,
Here.
Jeff Agnoli,
Here.
Fred Hancock,
Here.
Brian Smith,
Here.
Kate Putnam,
Here.
Peter Warden,
Here.
Greg Martino. Okay, Ben Robinson,
Here.
Clarence Barnes,
Here.
Ernie Thomas,
Here.
Doug Cedarholm,
Here.
Linda Sibley. Okay, Jay Grossman,
Here.
Jim Vercuzzi,
Here.
Kathy Newman. Okay, Michael Kim. and Chairman Malkin.
I am here.
Okay, go for it, John.
Okay. Let's see, where was I? Agenda tonight. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 items on the agenda. We have 3 continued public hearings. First off is Still Point, which is a modification from an earlier subdivision in West Tisbury, Safe Harbor Marina, which is in Tisbury, and the North Bluff modification, which is in Oak Bluffs. As I said, they're all continued public hearings. With any luck, we'll be able to close the public hearings. The last item is Meshacket Commons. It's an affordable housing development in Edgartown, and that is on the agenda for deliberation and decision. Before I forget to find out who is not qualified, Lucy.
Everyone is eligible. Woo.
Amazing. We haven't had that for a long time. That's great. And
John,
then
a reminder that I've been abstaining from the shacket.
okay, you'll have
I'm
to,
also
we
recused
can
from
both
that.
try to remember that. And then the last thing is we'll squeeze into the last amount of time that we have the approval of 3 sets of minutes. We had a slew of completed minutes, and I've decided that I would only ask you to do 3 at a time, at a maximum of 3 at a time. It's difficult to review them all and keep your patience. So we'll do it. We'll do 3 of those at the end of tonight, and we'll try to catch up over the course of the next 2 weeks. That's it for tonight. The agenda for next week is a few more hearings. The Four Sisters Inn, which is in Oak Bluffs, it's a continued public hearing. That hangar lot G at the airport, that is a public hearing. West Chop Club Tennis and Fitness Building, that's for deliberation. In fact, the next 3 items are all tentative. I suspect that's just to make sure that we are ready to go forward. I notice that Kathy Newman is here, so we can note that. So after the West Chop Club is 43 Look Street, that's a demolition in Tisbury. That's deliberation and decision. Again, that's marked tentative. We'll see. Meshacket Commons will be the written decision of the decision tonight, assuming we're able to reach a decision. If you're interested in any of those, I suggest you check the website next week to see whether or not they are on or have been scratched. That's it for the agenda. I have 2 other things that I need to talk about tonight. We need to bring together our finance committee to review the budget and to make some recommendations to the full commission. Ordinarily, that committee is comprised of the appointed rep from each town and the county. And accordingly, the committee will comprise Kathy, Ernie, Greg, Brian, Kate, Peter, and me. And if someone would please let Greg know, that would be very handy. Anybody is free to join that committee. And the duties of the FinCom are set out in our bylaws, section 8.2. Ernie will serve as chair as he's the current treasurer. And Ernie, you might have Adam try to schedule a meeting.
I'd like to just ask a quick question for the members that are on that. Is there any strong objection to meeting real time during the day at the commission office? You can answer that at your leisure, but it'd be nice to know if we could just sit down with papers and face to face in the meeting room at the commission building. There's only a handful of us, so we can distance, wear masks, whatever people desire. So.
Okay.
Go with that.
Thanks, Ernie. I think that's a great thing to think about. And maybe if someone has a problem, they should let Ernie know really quickly. And then he and Adam can work on scheduling it, whether in person or via Zoom. The second item I have is another committee, and it's the nominating committee. And I'm a bit behind the 8 ball on this one. Our bylaws say I'm supposed to constitute a committee in October. It's almost October. The job of the nominating committee is to come up with a slate of officers, a chair, a vice chair, and a treasurer. The committee members, let's see. I'm having a senior moment. It falls to the chair. The committee has to represent all towns and the county. And it falls to the chair, which is me, to appoint the members of the nominating committee. And I appoint Kathy, Jay, Doug, Ben, Brian, Jeff, and Peter. The committee will go ahead and nominate its chair. And I would ask Adam and Lucy, would you please schedule a meeting within the next week or so? The committee has to report back with a slate at our November 17th meeting. That's 2 meetings from tonight. And that slate will be acted on at the quote unquote regular meeting of the commission in December. And that would be the 3rd Thursday in December. So we've now got those 2 committees populated, and I expect they will be up and running very shortly. I don't have anything else to cover, and Adam advised me earlier that he has nothing. So with that, I will hand it over to Doug to start the continued hearings.
Okay, thank you, John.
Doug, before you begin, I'm going to recuse myself from the Still Point project.
Okay, thank
I
you.
also am recused from this project.
Okay, Ben and Jim continue to be recused. Okay, the public hearing in this matter opened on October the 6th. This is the continuation of that public hearing. Actually, it opened earlier because it was continued on October the 6th. We had, so this is the 3rd session of the public hearing. Alex, can you bring us up to date regarding what has happened since the October 6th session?
Yep. So this is the 3rd public hearing date for this project. We do have received some new information since October 6th. I'll just go through this quickly. So the applicant submitted an initial list of offers. Some of those offers are the same as previous offers that were made. There are some additions and updates, and I won't go through everything, but that was sent out to commissioners a few days ago. Some of the new additions are including an offer that there would be a preference for events that align with the Still Point mission, although other events could still be allowed under their discretion. But the rules for events would apply to all events, including Still Point and private events. Another offer would be for no more than 4 weddings per year. That's a new offer. The applicant will encourage carpooling, work with town on developing a shared use path, no amplified music outdoors at weddings, working with the butters to plant vegetation to screen light from headlights. So those are some of the new things in the offers. We also have met with the applicant a couple of times to talk about some of the concerns that the commission has brought up at the previous hearings. And in response to that, we have added some stuff to the record, including an affidavit that the applicant provided, which is a joint purchase agreement between or among Still Point, the nonprofit, the Martha's Vineyard Land Bank, the buyers of one of the residential properties and the previous owner. And this just sort of confirms that the sale was constituted as a single transaction among all of those groups. And the applicant has framed the project accordingly. We also looked into what the current policies are for events at the Ag Society and the Grange Hall for comparison, and I'll go through that quickly in the next couple of slides. We've clarified some things in the MPC housing policy, which is outlined in the staff report now. So essentially, the policy is there to mitigate any housing impacts from a project. And so that would include, the mitigation strategies would include setting aside land for housing or units for housing or monetary mitigation. There is an exemption in the policy for nonprofits if the nonprofit can demonstrate that the main population they serve is the same as those who would qualify for affordable or community housing. I don't believe we've received that level of confirmation from the applicant, but that's been clarified. If the applicant were to offer monetary mitigation under the housing policy, that would be about $51,000, accounting for the change of use. That's according to staff's calculation. We also have some comments from a water resource staff on the project. There had been a concern that the previous nitrogen calculation was based on a use factor that was too low. They had calculated all of their use at 3 gallons per day per seat for the uses under that usage category in Title V, I believe. So they revised their nitrogen calculations to incorporate the larger events, which would be under a different use category. And they submitted that today. The new calculation would still come in under the limit for the property. They've also offered or agreed to consider expanding the proposed denitrifying septic system to accommodate any future development on those lots. And if future development were to happen on the 2 lots that were not part of the current nitrogen calculation, then the area of those lots would also be incorporated into a new calculation. So that's been clarified. We have 1 new letter from the public and updated staff report. Just quickly, the Ag Society policies, because this had come up, are summarized here. So the Ag Society allows up to 6 weddings and 3 commercial events per year. Aside from that, all events have to be within the group's mission. The society uses its own discretion as to what type of commercial events can be allowed, but there is a focus on civic and community uses. There's no limit on the number of people other than what the town allows for the building itself. No alcohol can be sold, but guests can bring their own. And the Ag Society pointed out that these restrictions have sort of evolved over time as a result of discussions with the town and in regard to the agricultural preservation restriction that they have. So again, they use a fair amount of discretion, but there are some general limits. And then we also looked into the Grange Hall, which is managed by the Preservation Trust. And so they accommodate up to 180 events per year. I don't believe there's a strict limit, but that's pretty much what they've been doing. All events have to end by 9. They gave us a breakout for what that was in 2022, mostly nonprofit, but also for-profit, community, and private events, a smaller number of private events. The type of events are not strictly limited, but they generally fall under these categories. And they also gave us some more information about what they require for music, seating, and permits. So there are some restrictions specifically for music. Bands have to be on an approved vendor list. No amplified music except for keyboard and microphones. And then seating capacity for permits, public events and the sale or consumption of alcohol require an event permit from the town. So that was that's something that the Grange Hall requires. And that's it for a quick update.
Okay, thank you. Last time we were hearing from the applicants, various team members. I received a request that one member of the public has asked, because of their own time constraints, whether they could testify early, and I'm willing to accommodate that, because we're going to starting early. I believe that is a Mr. O'Neill. And is Mr. O'Neill here? Because if he's not, we'll just go on to the applicant.
Doug, I haven't seen them, but maybe they're here under a different name. So Mr. O'Neill, if you are here, please make yourself known. And I'm not seeing anything, Doug. So I think we can move.
Okay. All right. Well, if they show up, let me know. Thomas, do you have anything more to present with regard to your proposal? Or shall we go to general testimony from the public?
I think Marilyn may have something to open with, if I'm correct, Marilyn, our attorney, Marilyn Vakota, and if not, we're fine to go to public testimony, Doug.
Okay. Yeah, we do have 3 public hearings and a complex deliberation tonight, so we're gonna have to keep moving. Oh, I have a question. Wait, before we get to that. Has our water planner had an opportunity to review the applicant's submission today regarding nitrogen?
Not yet. No, we will
Okay.
do that though.
Then we will be having another session of this to give her an opportunity to do that and for the public to be able to review it. Go ahead. Marilyn, are you here?
Yeah, I am. I'm
Go
here.
right ahead.
So the only issue that I do want to address, because it's come up more recently well, tonight, as well as in my conversations with Alex, is the housing policy. And I just want to make clear that from our perspective, this property has already contributed to housing back in the original DRI lot 4.13, which is one of the lots that Still Point now owns, did go to the Dukes County Regional Housing Authority, who acquired title to it and subsequently decided to sell it and take the money and invest the money elsewhere for their purposes. So from our perspective, this property has already contributed to housing. The housing policy also provides that for residential DRIs, when the MVC is determining whether there's been any mitigation, one of the things that is looked at is whether there's been mitigation provided at the time of any prior subdivision. And that's what's happened here. There's also exceptions to the policy, the housing policy, one of which is if there's concrete evidence that the project's impact will call for housing or won't call for housing, there's an exception. I would submit to the MVC that it isn't clear at this point whether this project will call for additional housing. To start, there are no employees. If employees end up being hired throughout over time, then Still Point is willing to look at that. But at this point in time, it is also a nonprofit, which is one of the other exceptions, and Still Point feels that it's going to be providing a fair amount of support to other nonprofits and organizations that do provide social services. I think at one point, and it may be in the record, Thomas had provided a list of all the various nonprofits and organizations, many of them social service organizations, that have reached out to use the barn for their meetings. So Still Point feels that insofar as it's providing a place for other social services, it's better for the Still Point resources to be devoted to its mission. I think that's a better use of its resources than committing to any housing. On top of that, Still Point is not opposed to, if it determines in its sole discretion that housing there's a need for housing as a result of this project, then Still Point will consider constructing on one of the two lots that at this point there's no plan to do anything on, and that's 4.9 and 4.10. So I just wanted to address that particular issue because I feel like that's something that has come up a number of times. And with that, I would hand it over to public comment.
Well, before we do that, I will ask commissioners whether any commissioners have questions regarding the new materials, particularly the offers, or anything else before we hear from the public. Go ahead, Joan.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, we're only considering phase one, not any second phase of this project. I know in Alex's staff report, it refers to a potential phase two, but that's not in front of us. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So if there's a phase two, they'd have to come back for a modification.
I believe that's in our offers as well.
Well, even if it's not in the offers, you'd have to come back for sure. Okay.
If we thought of it already.
You did, and that's a good thing. Okay, I'm not seeing any commissioner with questions. I have, I think we're going to have to defer questions regarding nitrogen since we haven't heard from Sherry about it. I did have a question regarding the proposal of no outdoor amplified music at weddings and limiting any outdoor amplified music to the hours of 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. I noticed, and maybe this is something Thomas can address, that among your core values are quiet and nature, as stated in your presentation dated August the 4th. And given that you two direct abutters are Holly Hill Arboretum and the Land Bank, both of which are basically, among other things, dedicated to the quiet enjoyment of nature, how allowing any amplified music on your property, which will clearly impact your abutters, how is that consistent with your mission statement?
Thanks, Doug. It is our desire to remain open to the potential of someone coming in someday and plugging in an amplifier and playing some music. We don't have any plans for that. It's just like our phase two. We don't have plans for phase two, but we didn't want to limit ourselves on day one for a future that might entail some music. It is a quiet space, Still Point, and you can have, as we all know, some quiet amplified music. We felt like showing the neighbors that we would soften, that we would decrease the music from 10 p.m. is the West Tisbury ordinance to 9 p.m., that we would change that. And that major concern when I've spoken to all the abutters has been large, loud weddings. And so by saying no outdoor amplified music at large weddings, we thought that would hopefully cause some relief to the abutters. But you're right, it's not in our mission to have loud parties and weddings, but do want to keep some options on the table for renting the venue to help fund it. And quite frankly, I hope we never have to have a large wedding, but it is a funding stream that we want to keep on the table.
But you're proposing 4 weddings a year with over 80 people, so that'd be 4 weddings a year of 80 to 100 people. And you're certainly going to allow amplified, you've indicated you will allow indoor amplified music. And last time I checked, you can pretty often hear indoor amplified music when you're outdoors. I would be surprised if that could not be heard on the Land Bank property or the Poly Hill property.
Right. It's just like when anyone else in town has a wedding, the neighbors can hear it. That's why we did make a limit of 4 per year.
For large weddings, you're not making a limit of 4 per year for weddings with amplified music. You can have an unlimited number of weddings with amplified music if there are fewer than 80 people at them.
That's correct. But as I spoke with the abutters, nobody wants this to succeed more than me, and I'm here and I'm going to see my neighbors daily, and I'm just not the kind of person that's going to produce something that's going to ruffle the neighbors' feathers, but I do want to keep some options on the tables.
Well, we may have to address that in conditions. We'll have to see.
Okay.
Kathy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, it's sort of an extension of what you're saying. I'm looking at the offers, and so I'm a little confused. I got to no more than 4 weddings with more than 80 people, and then there are events with 80 to 100 people, no more than twice a week. So how do you put all those together? What is so?
I can simplify it for you, Kathy. It's basically, if we had a wedding of 80 to 100 people and it was in the off season, we could not have another event that week that was more than 80 to 100 people. And if we did a wedding, if we did 2 weddings on a week in the summer, we could then not have another large event that week. So again, I mean, 80 to 100 people is for us, the biggest event we'll ever have at Still Point.
But if it wasn't a wedding, it could still happen every week?
That's right.
And I just want to note also that the neighbors have had lively discussions with Thomas about these offers and these restrictions. So none of this comes as a surprise, as I understand it, to any of the neighbors. And they've been part of the dialogue, and they've been part of the evolution as these offers have evolved. They've evolved as a result of conversations with the neighbors. Right, Tom?
I'm sorry. Does it feel like it limits you too much if you had really numbers on these things, like no more than, I'm making this up, no more than 8 large events a season?
It's in there, Kathy. Just to kind of cut to the chase, it's in our offers. We can have no more than 2 events per week in the summer of 80 to 100 people. We can only have 1 of those a week in the off season. So we did calculate that and put that in the offers.
Right, but 2 a week for 10 weeks?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Thanks, Thomas.
Yep. And just to help put it into maybe people having a hard time understanding what 100 people looks like. The West Tisbury Library Room can accommodate, I think, 65 people. So, it's not a lot of people. It's more than 50 people, but it's not 200 people or 300 people. It's not a big, large event.
Okay, any other commissioner questions? Okay, then I will go to testimony from the public. First, we take testimony from anyone representing a town board. Do we have anyone signed up?
No one who registered represents a town board, Doug, but we do have, I think, 6 people on the list, just so you know.
Okay. Well, let's run down the list. You tell me who they are. I haven't seen it.
Yep. First up is Dana Nunes.
Is that person here?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, you have the floor.
Hi, good evening. I will keep this brief. I envision Still Point not as a community center, but as a place for people of varying viewpoints to come together as a community in play and conversation and engagement with the exceptional nature of the place. This is an ever widening divide on this island, in this country, and across the world. We can shrug our shoulders and hope that it goes away, or we can try to make a difference. I believe we need this now more than ever. This is our opportunity to do good work. I see only positives here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dana.
Next up is Jennifer Randolph.
Hi, good evening. I'll try to keep this brief. My name is Jennifer Randolph. I am the executive director of a new nonprofit called the Northeast Native Network of Kinship and Healing, which focuses on providing domestic violence and sexual assault services to Indigenous people. I'm also a member of the tribe, and over the last 10 years, I've built and ran the tribe's domestic violence and sexual assault program. In my experience, and also validated by Department of Justice reports, the thing that provides the most healing for any victim, any survivor that is Indigenous, is our culture and our connection to land. And so we built this nonprofit in 2020, and Thomas approached me last year and showed me Still Point. And it was everything and is everything that I would want to provide services at. Educational services, prevention services for young girls on what is a healthy relationship. And of course, with us, everything is tied into land. So that preservation of land and that space is so important to what we're doing as a program. When we talk about providing support groups, we're also talking about going through a walking path and sitting in nature and using our culture and our traditions in a way to bring people healing. So, and then to build off of what Dana said, we are at a time where it's not just individuals, it's not just my program, it's island-wide. We need to build relationships. I just came home from an international Indigenous Women's Conference in Monterey where I was a speaker. There are women there who represent panels at the United Nations for Indigenous people, women from Greenland, New Zealand, Australia, Africa, South America, Canada, all over the place. And one thing that was common amongst all of us was that the issues that we face today, we need to address with relationships with people and with the land. And what Thomas is offering is exactly that. He's providing a beautiful space that's just exceptional, that's been very cared for, a lot of resources put into this space to maintain it, to open it up to the public, to be a place where we can come together and build relationships, to work on resolving issues so we can get along, and also incorporate what's near and dear to me and to a lot of people is also that relationship to the land, the place that we call home here on the island. So I can't imagine a better space where I would want to house my programs. And I think it's a tremendous gift to the island community overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Next up is Lynn Whiting.
Hi, thanks
Hi,
for
Lynn.
thanks for the opportunity to share my thoughts here tonight. I'm just speaking as a private individual and a neighbor. I've lived less than a mile down the road from Still Point property since the mid-1970s. And about a year ago, Alan and I had the good fortune to take a walk, spend some time in the barn and take a walk around the property. And I was moved how many countless times over the decades I've driven by the property and had not a clue what was in there. And so the thought that this can be made accessible to our public of people of all ages is really heart-rendering to me. I think that Dana and Jen really summed up the essence of what I'd like to say, which is that the thought of islanders, young and old, coming together in the beautiful barns, surrounded by the nature and walking paths that are nurtured carefully by the land bank, gives me hope. Whether people gather for song or dance or conversation or simple quietude, that space offers great promise. The opportunity to exchange ideas and experiences indoors and out on the same property is a gift. I see a place for refuge, for differences to be aired, for healing to occur, for celebrating life. We live in troubled times. Being in nature can help one avoid internalizing the chaos of the world. Still Point has the potential to be a stress buster for each of us. When I was working to help raise funds for the last West Tisbury Library expansion, I often heard, build it and they will come. Indeed, that's what happened. Our library now serves the entire island community with a variety of quality programs. That same community has grown, as have their needs and interests. Another meeting place in our town would be welcome, especially one surrounded by such an accessible landscape. I look forward to learning more about the programs that Still Point will offer. And as a neighbor, of course, I'm concerned about traffic flow and usage of the land, but that's why we're here with the commission and the rules and the wisdom that you have to work with Thomas and his board to make this project become a reality in a constructive and timely manner. I'm last thing I want to say is I'm grateful for the generosity of the community and different individuals who've allowed this to become the reality that we know today, and for the vision for the future yet to be. I hope that this comes to fruition, and I thank each of you for your consideration. Thanks.
Thanks, Lynn. Who's next, Lucy?
Next up is Anna Fitch and Banker White.
Hi.
Hi there. I'm Banker. This is my wife, Anna. Longtime summer residents and a new family here in West Tisbury. We have 2 kids, 8 and 10, who are attending West Tisbury Elementary, and we're the closest abutters to the property. About 400 feet is where the barn is from us. It's we share a road together with Thomas. It's really refreshing. I loved hearing what Lynn and Dana and Jen had to say, because it reminds me of the many conversations I've had with Thomas about his vision for what he wants to do. And I agree with, also what Lynn said, is that there's some concerns as to how this is going to affect the neighborhood traffic flow, noise, and things like that. I knew Thomas, before we decided to buy the house, but this last year, getting to know him and beginning to kind of work through what this is going to do. And actually, to be frank, like listening to him manage this process in front of the NBC, I think he's an incredibly thoughtful and open person. And with his openness, he's waiting for feedback from the community. And, I also run a nonprofit. I totally understand why you need to leave certain things open to try and fund a vision that he has. But what I can say with what he's done and listening to Anna and I voicing our concerns and really spending time and coming to us and really to all the neighbors, is that I trust him even more than I already did. And I'm really excited to see this, come to fruition for him. And I think with everyone's feedback, because I think the reason why we decided to move our family to Martha's Vineyard, I think, is because of the strength of community and community bonds. And I totally believe that that's really at the center of what Thomas is trying to bring. And, as the closest abutters who I think are potentially most acutely affected by some of these issues, I want to offer my support of the proposal.
Yeah, and I'd like to just say too that, I share some of these concerns that have been echoed, and I do think there's details to work out, but it's such a beautiful place, and I think what Thomas is doing is really important. We're artists and conservationists, and this is just like the idea that this space would be open to the public is really special, and it'll change some things for what it's like for us. And but we're still in support of it, because it's really, we believe in it. It's going to be really nice that is a space that's open to the community. And we believe that the issues that are coming up can be worked through, and we're glad to be a part of the conversation, and hope that it does come to fruition.
Thank you, Anna.
Next up is Andrew Woodruff.
Andrew, where are you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, go right ahead.
All right, try again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So it's really hard to top, or not even try to top, but to add to what's already been said. So I'll be kind of brief. But I just want to say, for the record, I am on the West Tisbury Land Bank Advisory. I'm speaking as a private resident of West Tisbury, and that I had I was privy to a lot of the conversations working this through from the land bank perspective with Thomas, but none of this would have happened without Thomas's commitment to the land. And I just want to commend him for sticking through, all of the struggles, starting really at the Ag Hall, which is where they originally proposed the film festival that then morphed into something else over here at Still Point. So here we are. And, today I was thinking about what I would say, but just reflecting back on my involvement with the Agricultural Society when they moved to their new site almost 30 years ago, there were many discussions about how big to build a building. You know, was it really only going to be for 3 days out of the year? And we never imagined what the impacts that building and that site would have on the community. And you know, we had just in year 2, one of our enthusiastic volunteers passed away, and the first service, I believe, was in the front entryway of the Ag Hall. And I could have never imagined that's where I would have found myself. And a few years later, my mentor, Fred Fisher, passed, and I spoke at his service. And then 15 years later, my daughter, who was yet to be born, was at the time when we built it, gave her graduation speech. And I never imagined that I'd be sitting in that beautiful hall, my daughter giving her graduation speech. So these big buildings, these beautiful landscapes that run from the Ag Hall, to Poly Hill to now Still Point, are one of the great success stories, in my opinion, of conservation and also human, thoughtful human care and interaction with the land and with people. So, there's not much more to say. I hope that you'll approve this with good conditions. I worry about nitrogen. So I hope that you can try to figure out, the best solutions from a nitrogen standpoint. But otherwise, I'm 100% in favor of this and, with reasonable conditions. So thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Last on the list of registered speakers is David Foster and Tess Bramhall.
Hi, David. You want to go
Hi
first?
there. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks very much. I'm sitting here with Tess Bramhall. We are both residents of West Tisbury. We are co-organizers of the Martha's Vineyard Land Protection Fund, which donated funds to the Martha's Vineyard Land Bank to support the purchase and the conservation of the Still Point lots 4.3 to 4.8 that directly abut the Still Point Meadows. Tess lives on the adjoining conservation property of Seven Gates, and I am a 20-year-long senior associate of the Poly Hill Arboretum. So we're very concerned about the future of this land, and we're very dedicated to the conservation future of it and the entire Millbrook watershed. We have worked very closely with Thomas and with the land bank and many others, including and especially Brendan O'Neill from the Vineyard Conservation Society, to help pull together the deal that puts us eventually or finally in the position where we are today, which is to consider what's going to happen to the future of the property that Thomas and the Still Point Meadows group hold. Thomas played an incredibly important role in conserving this land and working very closely with Claudia Miller and everyone else to pull this off. We have nothing but the greatest respect for Thomas and for his broad vision. And we especially support the vision for a quiet, nature-based, and supportive set of activities to unfold at Still Point. Thomas himself has been dedicated to that, and we would like to support that. On the other hand, we are very concerned about the kind of open-ended, vague, and kind of unquantified and unqualified range of activities that might occur and seem to be only constrained by Thomas's assurance. I'd just like to point out before I say anything further that the vast portion of this landscape, both across the Poly Hill abutting landscape and across all of the Martha's Vineyard land bank landscape, is open to the public and is available for all the kinds of contemplative, nature-based, and quiet activities that people have envisioned. We are concerned that too much expansion of what Thomas proposes and proposes to take advantage of on these abutting landscapes will actually detract from them. So just to make a couple of quick points that draw from the letter that Tess and I submitted, and I will point out that Tess at one point submitted a letter of support for the project that was broadly based on the work that we had done with Thomas. She has subsequently rescinded that letter, having read the news reports and hearing some of the testimony about the vagueness of what might actually happen there. But let me just say, to begin with, we are in a new place from where we were 20 or more years ago when the development plans for this property were laid out. Much land has been conserved. A tremendous amount of public money has been spent to secure all the land bank property around the ponds and adjoining to this property. Therefore, the conservation future of this landscape should be preeminent. We are very concerned, as a kind of a second point, that the full plan for this property is not on the table. It's very vague whether there are 2 phases, 3 phases, 4 phases, or more that might take place. While we recognize the need for flexibility, we also recognize the need for constraint. Therefore, we would argue that the MVC should ask for more information so that they can understand the current proposal on the table and place constraints such that future proposals operate within those boundaries. We worry about the complete property that is under the control of Still Point Meadows. Right now, the specific focus is on 2 lots, but there are 2 additional lots, which even tonight we've heard about vaguely, might be subject to future development. There is a lot of uncertainty about how this project will be financed. And so one has to wonder about what new phases might appear or what new opportunities might appear to make this a viable venture. We are much less concerned about the activities that Still Point Meadows itself wants to undertake. In fact, everything that we have heard that they are interested in endorsing, and Thomas has described to us when we have visited with him and chatted with his advisors, all sound quite interesting, reasonable, low-key, small, and quiet. What we're mostly concerned about are the other groups that might rent the property or otherwise obtain access to the property, which would have a big impact on the surrounding land, and in fact, might actually take advantage of the surrounding land to undertake their own activities. The Martha's Vineyard Land Bank owns public land. It's available to the entire public. It shouldn't be seen as the property, the enterprise, or the spillover area for an abutter. The question of traffic has been raised. I actually live down the road, quite a bit down the road, but down the road from Still Point. I know what it's like to pull out onto that road. yes, I'm concerned about additional traffic. That road, I live more than half a mile from the road up on a hill, and yet I hear the traffic like a highway. But the big concern I have is the 100 or so people coming to events, along with all the caterers and trucks that are supporting them, pulling out on that road. I live across from Stony Hill Road on Buttonwood Farm Road. We just had a terrible accident that was highlighted in the paper, in which somebody pulling out of our road was hit directly by a truck barreling down State Road. And the question is not so much what will Still Point do for the traffic volume, but what will Still Point do in terms of traffic safety, given the fact that the sight lines, as you pull out of that property, are much poorer than the sight lines even in adjoining Polly Hill, or certainly at our property at Buttonwood Farm Road. And I guess Tess and I would just like to close by saying there are a world of collaborators who are willing to reach out and work with Still Point Meadows and work with Thomas to make his vision come true. Polly Hill, the Land Protection Fund, people at Seven Gates, and many other organizations, including the Land Bank. This is a property that is very important. There are ways to achieve synergies across adjoining properties. At one point, there was a discussion of using the parking lot at Polly Hill to accommodate both properties. It seems to us that the full range of options, the full range of opportunities to make this vision of Thomas's come true without leaving open the options that might despoil the entire neighborhood have yet to be explored. And so we would encourage all parties and the MVC to push that exploration as far as possible. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David. Does Tess wish to add anything? I don't want to cut her off. Are you up?
You're not cutting me off, and David did a job that I thoroughly agree with. So thank you for listening to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Who else, Lucy?
That's it for registered speakers. If there's anyone else in the audience who would like to speak, you can reach out to me in the chat. You can raise your hand virtually. You can turn your video on and wave. Larry. Larry, you have to unmute.
Larry.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
My name is Larry Glick. My wife and I are residents in Chilmark. I've gotten to know Thomas quite well over the years, and I've been to Still Point. I've seen the beauty of the property, and I know and truly believe that Thomas will be a responsible steward of the land and a good neighbor, as some of his neighbors have pointed out. I think he cares deeply about our community, and I'm excited to see the potential of Still Point as a community space. And I'll just add, I'm an avid photographer. I love to showcase the beauty of the Vineyard in my work. I'm a member of Old Sculpin Gallery. I'm a contributing photographer to the Gazette and MV Magazine. And I've shared with Thomas, I think, part of the space could be a wonderful place for workshop for the arts, for photography. I participated in several photography salons at Featherstone this summer, and it was small groups of people, maybe 12 people, 15 people, but we got so much out of it and shared not only our love of the island, our love of photography, and learned a lot. And I think Still Point will be a place for learning and continuing education. And I just want to express my support of Thomas and Still Point. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Joan, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Well, I'm happy. I wanted to ask a question of David, but I actually thought Jeffrey was Ben. I don't know why. So I think that you can let the public finish. I just wanted, David, don't go away. I'd like to ask you a follow-up question.
Are you still here, David? I hope so.
Yes, I see him.
Yes, okay, good. Okay, well, let's make sure we do that. Mr. Dubard, is Jeffrey Dubard next?
Yes.
Okay.
Chair, thanks for the compliment. I'll take getting mistaken for Ben's good looks any day. Thank you, and I'll just begin by saying that I'm speaking as a West Tisbury resident and friend of Thomas's, not in my capacity as a committee member, town committee member, or director at Seven Gates. I have valued so much time that I've spent with Thomas at Still Point as he's been envisioning and figuring out what this can and should be. And I will remind everyone or anyone who doesn't know that this is simply the continuation of really important work that Thomas has been doing for a long time. The Martha's Vineyard Film Festival was, the name didn't begin to encapsulate the spaces that he created, the events he created, the senses of belonging, of inclusion, of bringing voices to the community that didn't necessarily feel that they had other places to do it. And that is something that, as others have said, we are desperately lacking. You know, I'm so grateful for the conservation space that we have throughout the island, our ability to have that connection with nature. What we are woefully lacking in is inclusive spaces to connect with one another, and where people sort of from across the island in different groups struggling with different issues feel that sense of belonging. Thomas has always been sensitive to that and has done an amazing job at creating those spaces. And I think that this is really the next step and a culmination of a career on the island spent with that intention. So you know, obviously there are particulars that need to be worked out, but, you know, I think that this is something very special, and I'm incredibly grateful that he's taken on the task of creating it.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Chris Murphy, I'm going to hold. I see your hand. I'm going to call on you, but you testified last time. I want to make sure we get anyone else who wishes to testify, and then I will get back to you. Okay. Is there anyone else you see?
I'm not seeing anybody else, Doug.
Okay, then Mr. Murphy, you can go again.
Oh, I don't want to get in the way of Joan. She's got a question.
You'll never get in the way of John. You don't have to worry about that.
All right. All I want to say is, if there was ever a project that should be approved by the commission, this is it. And the second thing is, God bless every one of you for being here. I can't believe how much time you're putting in. I did it myself, and it doesn't seem that bad when you're doing it, but boy, every one of you should get a gold star. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. We appreciate that. Joan, you have a question for David Foster?
I do. So David, I appreciate your concern about, if I understood you correctly, not so much traffic congestion, but traffic safety. And I recognize that you're not a traffic engineer, but I was wondering whether you had anything to suggest or offer in the way of trying to ensure safety for cars exiting and traveling along that section of road. I don't, you know, you may say, no, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I wonder if you had anything in mind.
Well, let me start by reinforcing the fact that I am anything but a traffic engineer. So thank you very much. Yes. You know, I'm impressed that there was a traffic analysis done. My concern is, my understanding is that in many projects, certainly off of the island and presumably on the island, there is some consideration given to what is the access and what danger does it impose, and egress and access and so on. And so I would like this project to evaluate that, because we are talking about a tremendous amount of traffic. I mean, 100 people plus all the caterers to support that, you know, the musicians, whether they're electrified or not, and the vehicles and everything else. To me, that's a real danger, because this is a dangerous part of that road. It's right after the Brook Cross. There's a change in elevation. There are short sight lines. There's a tremendous traffic load. So I would like that looked at. I don't begin to see, when you look at that site, there are no obvious physical adjustments that could be made to make it safer. It is just a place where you have to be very cautious. And I worry that wedding guests pouring out are going to be in a very different situation than they are when they're pouring out of the ag hall onto a big, long, straight stretch of the road, or when they pull out of the range hall. And then, Joan, you just gave me the opportunity, if you don't mind, for me to say one other thing, which is we are not in any way questioning Thomas. This is not about Thomas. Thomas, like all of us, could drop dead tomorrow. And so the decisions that are being made deal with this property and what could happen on the property. This is not a point of questioning Thomas or a point for testimonials to Thomas. I have thoroughly enjoyed and support Thomas in all of his endeavors. I just worry about the land.
So
Thank you.
let me just say that when we look at a project, we strive to be blind to the identity of the developer, because we're talking, as you suggest, we're talking about the property and it could be owned by anyone. The point is to make sure that if we do approve the project, that the approval it runs with the land and doesn't depend on the identity of the owner. So that is our goal. It's always our goal. But thanks for your other thoughts. We do have a traffic assessment. I do believe it addresses the visibility isn't the right word, but the clearance. But I'll go back and check that and see how much guidance it provides. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And David, what you've identified is the need to clearly define what the scope of the activities are in the future, and to make sure that the commission imposes conditions such that the land will be respected in the use of those activities. That's what I'm hearing, and that's our job, and shame on us if we don't do it. Okay, there are a number of hands here of all of people who have testified before, so and it's 8:04. So I'll call on everyone, but please let's keep it succinct, and because we've got a lot more to do tonight, and we will be continuing this to address the nitrogen issue. So Thomas, it's your show, so go ahead, and then I'll get to the other two.
Great. Lucy, could I please share my screen quickly?
You should be good now.
Okay. I just wanted to follow up on David's comments. He's right. You know, was a really dangerous corner. It's a lot less dangerous now. Can everyone see? This is the entrance of Still Point. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
So we just cleared 2 feet back about to where this yellow line is. that made such a tremendous difference when you are exiting Still Point and you turn right. This was the real dangerous turn, is when you pull out of Still Point, cars come right around this corner. We've only pulled back 2 feet. We wanted to go really gently so that we don't change the character of that corner and the feeling of woods and rural character. We could go, I think we could pull back probably 3 more feet. I want to wait till somebody who knows more about this than myself will help us. But I am very confident that by pulling back this corner a little bit and softening it, and certainly if we work with the town of West Tisbury to put a bike path in here, that will only help the viewpoints. So I think we've taken what was a very dangerous corner, and I'm going to say we improved it 75%. That's all I have to share.
Thank you, Thomas. Andrew, go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just going to reiterate. That's what I was going to say regarding Thomas's comments. I was out there looking at it yesterday. It's a very dangerous section of road, but our roads are dangerous everywhere on the island now. And you could do considerable more clearing there without, I think, really changing the integrity of that woodland and get a much better view line. So I don't think this is a big issue. And worst case scenario, if it was, I guess maybe big events need to have a police officer right on the road. That's it.
Anna Fitch.
Hi, I'll keep it really brief, but I drive in and out of that driveway every day. Our kids cross that street going to and from the school bus, and the pullback of the brush has greatly improved the safety. It can go even further and it will get better. But I just wanted to second what Thomas said, that there is something that can be done to improve safety. And it's been great to work with Thomas to push it in that direction already. That's all.
Thank you. Thomas, you might want to consult with our traffic planner, and if he has the time to walk that area with him, he may have some suggestions for further improvement of the sightlines. Yeah, my own experience is that the sightlines there are terrible. So I'm very happy to hear that you've improved them, and maybe our traffic planner, Mike Morrow, could assist you with some more ideas on that. Anyway, okay, Adam, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Doug. I just want to give some explanation. Sherry has COVID, but we did look at the calculations that were made by the applicant for nitrogen. Because the uses are so diverse and we don't really have a firm grasp of exactly what it is. We basically, we made a decision that we would accept what they have, indicating that we thought it might be a little low, but that we would probably ask for testing if we did permit it, so that we could define exactly what we were seeing, similar to what we're doing in other projects, and then adjust the mitigation as we saw what the uses were and what was actually being generated. They came back with a slightly higher total at about 4. We haven't looked at that, but I suspect that our recommendation is going to be the same. That even if
we'll hear from Sherry about it, Adam.
I will, but I'm telling you what Sherry said. I worked with her, so you can.
I understand that, but I would like to hear from Sherry about it at the continued public hearing. I don't expect it will take very long, but I do want to have her. I want to hear from her about it, and more importantly, I want the public to have an opportunity to review something that was submitted today, and that's why I'm going to continue the public hearing. And if there's no additional need for testimony at that point after hearing from Sherry, we will close the public hearing. It doesn't have to be more than 10 minutes long.
Fine, but I wanted to
appreciate your report on it, though.
I just wanted to get in the record as to what we were seeing. I'm sure it'll be at the next time we review it, but her report is there, and we got slightly higher totals at 4 o'clock today.
Okay. Oh yeah, go ahead, Marilyn.
I just want to close the loop on the traffic here because we got a little sidetracked, but there is a site distance analysis summary in the traffic report. And in that site distance analysis summary, mind you, this was done before the additional brush cutting. In that summary, all of the measured distances for the intersections are better than desired, with the exception, and again, this was before the brush cutting, with looking right southbound. So I think that's where the additional brush cutting was undertaken. And I think based upon the additional brush cutting, I think it probably meets or exceeds the desired distance. For all the others, it exceeded the desired site distance in the traffic study. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Tripp, did you have your hand up? You have to unmute.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation about the safety, and I do think that by the time this is over, we're going to have to get somebody at the end of a driveway during an event that has over so many people. That'll take care of that problem. And it probably could be a college guy or something that stays with it for the summer and keeps an eye on everything going in and out. The one thing that Mr. Foster said that really stuck in my head, and it piqued my interest when he talked about the stuff that isn't developed yet and what could happen. But it also, I moved Mrs. Anderson out of there, and then I moved Claudia Miller in, and everybody breathed a sigh of relief, like, oh my God, she does wonderful things. We're all set. And a couple of years later, bang, here we are again with something else. I'm very scared. In view right now, the Vineyard Open Land Foundation is trying to sell off property of the Packers over in Chappaquiddick. And it may start to set a precedent, because I often wondered when some of these conservation groups are going to try and sell stuff off. And that's been on my mind all day, and I shouldn't really bring it up now, except we could drop dead tomorrow. I'm pretty close to dropping dead anyhow, I think. But that's a point well taken. Everything could be changed at the drop of a hat. So some of these things have to be penciled in pretty firmly. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Tripp. Mike Morrow, you had your hand up, and then I'd like to continue this.
Yeah, basically, I was just going to reiterate what Marilyn had said. I had my hand raised. I was going to basically just go through what the traffic assessment had said back in, I believe it was July. But yeah, the stopping site distances and the intersection site distances are exceed the requirements or the required distances for those. And then as far as the crash history goes, there were 7 crashes at the intersection of State Road and North Road between 15 and 2019. There was one that took place at State Road and Still Point Road between that same time, and excuse me, that one accident happened in 2015. But I can head out there and just take a walk with the applicant and just confirm all that stuff for you guys.
I think we have to point out that that project was pretty much empty for a good bit of that time.
Correct.
And just so I understand sight line and stopping distances, Mike, they're based on, I assume, on the posted speed limit at the
yes, correct. Yep.
And this posted speed limit at that particular point is what, 35 miles an hour?
I believe so. Yeah, I have to go back and double check, but yeah, I believe, yeah, the intersection 430 feet. Yeah, it's 430 feet left and right for intersection. So yeah, that's about 35. Yeah, it's 35 miles an hour, I believe, posted.
And people do travel faster than the posted speed limit on Martha's Vineyard from time to time, don't they?
Yeah, sometimes they like to.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay. Yes, Thomas?
Just one question, Doug. I think some of the concern, like that Mr. Foster raised tonight, was, what happens if Thomas isn't here? And that's a fair concern. So if Still Point were to somehow shut its doors and want to put the land up for sale, whoever bought this land would have to go back to the MVC. Is that correct?
Any change in the use.
Right. So I can tell people that if they're worried about what happens after Still Point, anything that would have happened after Still Point would have to go back to the MVC. So that's helpful to know.
But it's a little bit more complicated than that, Thomas, because you're starting out with a very a well-intentioned project and really good people on your board. 50 years from now, there's going to be a completely different board, even though the mission statement may be the same. And what we have to do is identify the potential uses of the land and make sure that the project is conditioned in such a way that is compatible with the values that the commission has been mandated to protect. So that's just what we're struggling with here. And I think we've gotten an awful lot of good information during the public hearing, and we'll continue to work on it. So you're right. If there was a significant change in a proposed use, it absolutely has to come back here.
Okay.
So in any event, what we'll do now is continue this public hearing to what date, Alex?
November 17th is the next available date.
Is there a good chance that Sherry will be available then?
I believe so. She's sick right now, but that's 2 weeks away, so.
I'll continue it to November 17th, and it doesn't have to be long, and I fully intend to wrap it up at that time. If there are questions the commissioners have for the applicant or for Alex, please get them to them both through Alex within the next week, so that we can turn it around and get answers from the applicant if necessary. Thanks very much. Continue to November 17th. On to the next one. Safe Harbor Marina. Is Chris Scott here? Chris, I'll bet you're here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Alex, do you want to bring us up to date on where we stand with this? What's happened since the last session?
Yep. So we did receive some new material. This is the 4th public hearing date. Just a reminder, this is the proposed site plan. They're building a new rack where there are currently buildings that will be removed. Relocating an existing rack, adding some landscaping features, boardwalk, drainage, and parking. So new material that we've received since the previous hearing date include a response to MVC questions, including from commissioners and staff. Just quick summary, the applicant does plan to install electrical conduits at the new rack for serving future electrical boats at such point that becomes feasible for the applicant. The applicant also clarified information about projected employees and existing offsite housing. The updated projection for employees is 1 full-time technician and 1 seasonal dockhand that will be added as a result of this project. And they've also clarified what existing housing they have. They currently have units at 80 Lagoon Pond Road and 61 Lagoon Pond Road. That totals 10 bedrooms currently, and they're currently in the process of adding 6 bedrooms at 80 Lagoon Pond Road. And the applicant's also looking to buy a single family house somewhere else on the island. So it would appear that the current employee housing would be adequate for what the project will create, according to the applicant. The applicants also submitted a sustainability presentation about Safe Harbor Marina, the larger corporation, just sort of aspirational goals and efforts that they've been making toward habitat restoration and emissions reduction and that sort of thing, just in a general sense. Nothing specifically for this project, but for context that was submitted. A question had come up as to what sort of restrictions there are on the island for boat horsepower in the ponds. I don't believe this is within the commission's jurisdiction necessarily, but we did confirm that Edgartown Great Pond, Tisbury Great Pond, and Chilmark Pond at least all have restrictions on the amount of horsepower allowed for recreational or non-commercial vessels. Lagoon Pond does not have any restrictions on horsepower currently. The concern there was the effect of larger, more powerful boats on sedimentation. But again, I believe that that would be outside the commission jurisdiction. And we have an updated staff report incorporating this information and 6 new letters, which brings the total to 63. And just quickly, last time at the last hearing date, we sort of had to rush through this. So I just wanted to quickly show these, which will be in the record. I believe they already are on the website. This is just a quick summary of what's being proposed in terms of the number of boat spaces. So the red arrows are the existing boat racks and the blue arrows are the existing boat slips. So currently there are 78 spaces for boats on the racks and 57 boat slips for storing boats or valet service in the water. And then as proposed, the rack spaces increase from 78 to 118. So an addition of 40 spaces, those are all valet spaces. The number of slips in the water stays at 57, but 10 of those would be repurposed from storage spaces to valet spaces. And this is where there was some confusion earlier on in the process. So the 10 spaces for storage, that will reduce the number of boats being stored season long in the water by 10 boats. But then using those spaces for valet service will mean that, according to the applicant, there would be about 4 or 5 additional boats each day out and about in the pond and then coming back in at the end of the day. So I just wanted to clarify that. And we also have a breakdown of that in a table form, which is in the record.
Okay. Chris, you have an opportunity to expand on what Alex has reviewed, if you'd like, or I can just see if there's any additional testimony from the public. And if not, you will have an opportunity to make a closing statement, and I will close the public hearing, depending on how long this goes. Anything you want to add now? Do you want to keep your powder dry?
No, I would say thanks, Alex. You did a great job of just kind of summing everything up. So I will speak last if there's anyone to speak. So.
And are you comfortable with what Alex presented with regard to the current storage and the various categories and the proposed? So we have a pretty clear idea of the degree of expansion you're proposing?
Yeah, we had a dialogue about it. So yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Ben Robinson.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I would like Chris Scott for you to review the planning board letter that was sent early on in the process, this probably months ago at this point, and respond to the issues that the planning board has brought up, especially, I think, the bike path easement. The bike path easement is a great offer, but it does go through a wetland. And it would be nice to understand how Safe Harbors will help shepherd that through a permitting process so that we can realize that as an asset to the town beyond just having that easement in place. So if we do close the hearing tonight, please try to respond to those issues in writing before the written record is concluded so that we can take those into account when we think about how we potentially will condition this project.
Just so I'm not on touch of that as I'd like to be, Ben. The wetland that the proposed bike easement goes through, is that part of the Safe Harbors land or is it somewhere else?
It would be, the easement is entirely on their property. If Alex puts up that map from earlier that he showed, I think they're showing the new, and I'm glad to see the easement actually making its way out to Lagoon Pond Road. That's great. But you can see how the wetland is delineated and the easement to make the connection to where the little footbridge is actually has to cross over the wetland. And so that's going to take a certain amount of permitting at the Conservation Commission. And I would want to understand how Safe Harbors wants to participate in that process with the town as the landowner. It'll make it easier than us trying to configure a condition if we have a sense of how Safe Harbors wants to approach that.
Okay. I'm glad I asked because that's a little bit clearer in terms of, it might help Chris understand what he may have to propose if he's able to work with the town on that. Okay, I see Lucy Morrison up. You go ahead.
Hey, so Greg Martino emailed me some questions earlier. I guess my question to you, Doug, and Chris Scott would be, do you want me to read them, or would you prefer that I forward that email and get answers in writing?
Why don't you read them? Chris, you're not obligated to answer them now. If you're comfortable, that's fine. But you can respond in writing, although to the extent you can answer them now, it increases the chances we'll be able to close the public hearing. Go ahead.
Okay, so Greg's questions were, what kind of bottom paint is used? Will they be getting rid of bottom paint altogether with the new boat racks? Would they be willing to use non-copper, eco-friendly paint for 100% of the rest of the boats that are going to be in the water? Does their stormwater mitigation plan only mitigate for their site, or does it include Lagoon Pond Road, which frequently floods? And would they be willing to mitigate flooding on Lagoon Pond Road? So those are Greg's questions.
I bet I know the answer to the last one. Go ahead, Chris. Do you want to address the bottom paint issue?
Yes, so we have been piloting copper-free bottom paint over the last 2 years, trying to find something that actually worked and worked well. This winter, all of the work we are doing is with 100% copper-free bottom paint. And any of the rack boats that we would take in, we do not, even to date, we don't recommend bottom paint on them at all. We actually encourage no bottom paint. It holds value to the boat more and is better for the rack system itself. So I'd say, yeah, I mean, that's something we've been moving forward to the last 2 years, just trying to find something that works well. In terms of the mitigation or the stormwater plan, and it is for our site. It really can't be for off of our site. I will say that I think the added drainage swales will help with that a lot. Both roofs, or at least the roof along the street on the building on the northwest corner of the property, all of that's going to end up in a drainage swale now and won't end up on the street. So it'll help.
You'll be keeping your water on your property.
Correct.
Okay. If a client, a customer says, I want copper bottom paint, do you refer them elsewhere? Will you do it even against your recommendation? What's your policy?
So a lot of the copper bottom paints are like high performance stuff, more used on sailboats. So we don't really deal with any of the high performance sailboats. So we're going to be copper free only.
Okay. Joan.
Yeah, actually, I have a question for Jay Grandy, and I looked through the screens and didn't see him. He had written and had commented that the project will bring the marina substantially into compliance with the floodplain regulations and provide land-based storage for boats, which would benefit water quality. That I get the last half of it. The town welcomes the capital investment in Tisbury and the flood mitigation and environmental benefits of the proposed improvements. And I was going to ask him, get clarification as to what the flood mitigation benefits were, and also how the project brings the marina substantially into compliance with the floodplain regulations. I'm happy to ask the applicant, but I then think maybe it would be also handy to have Liz, if Liz is here tonight, comment as well.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, Joan.
Hi.
Yeah, I read that comment by Mr. Grande too, and I don't really understand what his point is. A couple of concerns I have is that the rainwater is getting heavier, and if it's going to be just addressed by having it percolate into the ground, I think that's a concern. Increased flooding due to stronger storms is a concern on the property. The planters, I think it would be much better in terms of flood and rainwater control if there weren't planters, but if plants were planted in the ground, strongly rooted, native, naturalized plants with that are wind and salt tolerant. I don't really, I did look at the floodplain bylaw for Tisbury, and I didn't, it was somewhat vague, and I didn't see anything in there that answered the question that Mr. Grande asked.
Yeah, to just say, Chris, I don't know whether you, undoubtedly you read Jay's comments. Can you enlighten me as to how what you're doing will bring the marina substantially in compliance with the floodplain regulations, and also what the capital investment in the flood mitigation, providing flood mitigation benefits? I see Reed's hand up. He might be able
Yes,
to.
so do I. Do you want to have Reed take a whack at that for you, Chris?
We can answer that pretty well, yeah.
Okay, that's why he gets paid the big bucks. Go ahead. Reed.
Okay, thank you. So what I believe he's pointing at is right now you have buildings that are below flood elevation, do not meet any of the flood code requirements, and do not allow for floodwaters and venting as required for all new buildings, but those buildings are going to be removed. So you're going to take what is substantially not in compliance and remove them completely and replace them with racks that do not require any venting or additional flood measures. But that's what I believe he was probably pointing at.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So it's more a matter of eliminating non-compliance by eliminating the buildings.
Yes.
Ben?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. It's not quite a non-compliance issue because those buildings pre-exist the floodplain regulations, but by removing those buildings in the floodplain, the property itself is more, it's protected from flooding without those buildings, and I think that's what he was talking about.
That's great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I just would note on the planters, there weren't like normal planters. They're really like low level with, our plan was Rosa Bagosa, beach grasses, like all natural native, like shoreline plants. So that's, I mean, really, like, what was she talking about? More to like solidify the soil and keep things together. So.
Okay, let's see if there are any members of the public who wish to testify on this matter. I'd like to hear from people who have who have not yet testified at all. We've had a lot of people who've testified. Seeing anybody, Lucy, other than Mr.
Martin Homlish registered to speak.
Okay, is Mr. Homlish here?
He is.
Okay.
Yeah, I am. Hi.
Go right
So
ahead.
I've been on the island for 48 years and 25 years at the marina currently known as Safe Harbor. So all the way back to when the Mayseals owned that marina. And a couple of things come to mind. We also live on the Great Pond. So I'm a member of the Great Pond Foundation and have a fairly good understanding and a tremendous amount of respect for what that foundation does and how important it is to keep the Vineyard ponds and waterways clean. Having said that, a couple of things I'd like to say about what's happening with Safe Harbor. The improvements that they've made to the facility and the experience are really quite significant. Number one. Number two, having had a boat there for 25 years, I can tell you that in those 25 years, I've never really taken a trip down the end of the lagoon. So I know there was some discussion about people from the marina spending time on the lagoon. My experience is that most of the people go in and go out. That's number one. Number two, when I had my first boat there, it was on a rack for about 10 years. And I can tell you during that period of time, we used the boat much less frequently because it was on a rack. It's not as convenient. And the whole thing about the bottom paint, that's absolutely correct. The other thing that I think is important is my sense is that the lagoon has some similar challenges that the Great Pond has, which primarily is the nitrogen that is being spilled into the lagoon, spilled into the pond. Majority of it comes from nature. There's a large percentage of it that comes from housing, sewage, et cetera. I know on the Great Pond, for example, we don't have any rack system. All of our boats are in the water. The idea about the horsepower, by the way, that's a myth. Every Saturday and Sunday, if you go to Wilson's Landing, there are dozens of boats that are being put into the pond with 50, 100 horsepower motors. So I wouldn't worry about that one so much. But I would like to say that being an island summer resident for the almost 50 years, I think one of the challenges this island has is that it is not a boater-friendly island. And in terms of commerce, not just for the island itself, but also for the town of Vineyard Haven, I think there's some merit in the improvements that this company is willing to make in this particular piece of property. The improvements they've made already are significant. Adding rack boats is actually much better than, for example, if another marina is decided to be built on the pond, the rack boats are going to be much less challenging for the environment. And most importantly, being a business person and running my own business, I think there's a good opportunity to improve the quality of the waterfront in your town, and also a good opportunity to attract more people to visit, which is a good thing. So I wanted to just share my point of view and also encourage you to think about the positive side of what these folks are doing.
Thank you, Martin. Lucy, do you see anyone besides Mr. Zeno and Mr. Gitlitz?
I've been looking through and I don't see anyone right now, Doug.
Okay, well, we'll call on Larry and Tom. Gentlemen, you each testified before, so if you can address new points. Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you. I won't take your time reiterating my concerns over the safety on the lagoon or the existing or future pollution. And I want to be clear, I'm not opposed to replacing dilapidated buildings or improving practices. What I am concerned about is expansion only. This has nothing to do with safe harbors or with Chris. In my time on the island, I've seen it as Burt's Marina, Mayseal Marina, Prime Marina, Safe Harbors Marina. We don't know who's next, if there is a next. I have seen boats in there with multiple 350 horsepower engines. And when I say multiples, 350 horsepower engines and more than one of them, just on one single boat. So I don't hear anybody limiting the size of the engines. I just think that all the better practice is replacing dilapidated buildings with better buildings is great. Expansion is a different issue. And I speak for myself, and I'm sure some of my neighbors, that it's the expansion that's the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Tom Zeno.
Hi, I wanted to clarify a couple of things. The last time I spoke, I actually had fallen asleep just before I spoke, and I woke up, so I don't think I was that clear. I actually am opposed to the project as it is presented. And we all know what a problem the West Arm is and how taxed it is environmentally. And what I don't think a lot of people realize is how taxed it is boating wise too. Boating traffic, they're talking about, you're probably looking at 40 to 80 more boats on a daily basis in season when it's very busy. And the amount of boat traffic through the lagoon, just like you do traffic studies when you're doing a project on any major road, you're always requiring a traffic study. There should be a study done on the amount of boat traffic that goes through there. And one of the few things I mentioned then were also the reality of all the boats that are coming out of the West Arm, if you have 40 to 80 more boats, and if the other project that goes through that gets represented from the Martha's Vineyard shipyard, there's a lot of boat traffic that's going to increase there. And it doesn't also, it's not just the West Arm, it's, the whole front part of the lagoon, under the bridge, you got one of the sharpest turns there. It's very hard, even on a regular basis, to go through there, especially with wind and everything. So you should consider doing any projects in there is boat traffic and what needs to be done to regulate all of this, because it has to be part of a whole package. Because you're going to be increasing a lot of danger in that particular area with the amount of boats that will be increasing the usage there. And this is in season. What I was talking about the last time I spoke was talking about speed limits and different things, no wake zones similar to Tajmu. That's the kind of thing that with any increase of use of Lagoon Pond really needs to happen. And that's something that, although I know that you mentioned that it wasn't part of your privy to look at that, looking at your privy is looking at the whole works of everything and the functioning of it. And like I said, just as traffic on roads that you consider, you should consider the traffic that this will increase in Lagoon Pond, especially the west end and this whole front section of the lagoon entering onto the harbor. It's something that needs to be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. And you're not the only person who's ever fallen asleep watching a Martha's Vineyard. I assure you. Any other members of the public, Lucy?
I'm not seeing anybody, Doug.
Okay, Chris Scott, the applicant always gets the last word. So you can say anything you want at this point. Then we will then close the public hearing, leave the written record open to give you an opportunity to address what Ben Robinson raised to the extent you haven't already, and submit any additional offers, and then we'll get you on to the next part. So you have the floor.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody on the commission. I know the amount of time you guys spend on this is mind-blowing, to me, honestly, not going through this before. And for the time that you're spending here to make sure that our island is developed reasonably and responsibly, ensuring that for generations here. I do understand that better than probably most. I'm a generational islander with roots going back to the early 1700s. I am concerned with how this island takes shape, how it's developed. I'm continuing my lineage here on the island by raising my two boys. And I hope they get to continue that as well going down the road. As many generational islanders before me, my heart and soul are on the water. I had my first boat when I was 8. I started cleaning boats on Unclos Harbor. I started working the docks there. I was a launch captain. I was assistant harbor master. I left college and continued down this marina path. I was a dock master for one of the largest marinas in Massachusetts. We had over 686 slips. I built a boat share business in Massachusetts to one of the largest franchises in the country. I was able to move home with my boys and to manage Prime and now Safe Harbor. I will say having those experiences has brought me to dozens of boatyards throughout the country, and a lot in Massachusetts, frankly. And why I say that is because I've seen everything when it comes to how places operate, and I know that, and I dedicate to operating this place as one of the best places I've ever been to. A little bit about Safe Harbor. If anyone doesn't know, Safe Harbor's been around for 2017, but it has roots way back to the early 2000s. They acquired Brewers. Brewers was the premier service facility in the Northeast and in the country, frankly. And so when they joined, we became the most best marina and service provider for boaters in the country. What's really cool about Safe Harbor and what made me really want to stay with Safe Harbor when they bought was its culture. The leadership of this country is made up of this company is made up of boaters, legendary boaters, and you could look some of them up. But it doesn't make us just a boat business. We're a lifestyle brand, and our goals aren't just in making money and putting people on the water, but it's if we're not operating in ways to sustain our environment and rebuild our most important resource, the environment, then we would have no business. And I would say if you haven't had a chance to look at our corporate sustainability, environmental, social, and governance program and our sustainability report, I really think you should. You know, if I was never around, this is the stuff that governs who would run this. Their stewardship isn't built on my shoulders. It's from the top down, frankly. throughout, not just here as this project, but throughout the country, we do step back. We look at our operations. We looked at how we make how we put projects together, our members, what our future needs are, and not just us, but the property and the environment that we work around, and say, how can we do this? How can we do it right? How can we positively affect our footprint? Just in the last 18 months since Safe Harbor took over, we've done a lot to change our standard operating procedures. And that has to do with everything that we're talking here about protecting the pond. Our SOPs are all about protecting the waterfront. How can we, and a few examples of this is, we moved all of our mechanical work away from the waterfront into our shop. Bottom paint happens in our shop. Any sanding that happens, it happens with a vacuum sander. We do not allow certain subcontractors and subcontractors that we do allow on the property. They have to have insurance, they have to sign in, they get inspected, and then they sign out. We perform all of our bottom washing over a recycling and collection system. It has no discharge to the pond. We put trash barrels around the marina in the headed dockheads so that trash would get disposed of properly and not just thrown around. We put a fish cleaning station in so that when people fillet their catch, it's not just thrown into the pond. We take that waste and a lobsterman takes it, or we dispose of it offshore the way it's supposed to be. As I mentioned earlier, this last year, we piloted some more copper-free bottom paint, and it worked out really well this past year with a new brand. And we're going 100% for our 2023 customers, which I think is awesome. So why this project and why are we trying to do this? And, you know, everyone's like expansion. I would say we should reword that as a site improvement plan. We evaluated the site and we identified a couple things. We had a lot of we have old buildings on the property. They're in a floodplain. They need a lot of work. Our footprint here is outdated. It doesn't fit what we're doing to date. We had additional site uses on the site that are not water dependent. We had an aging fuel tank, which we ended up replacing. Honestly, the site felt like a boatyard, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to be a marina and something's nice to go, and it's good for our members. What we also noticed, though, was the growing wait list of customers and the decade-long wait list of mooring customers that exist at each town. So the big question was, how do we do that? How do we address these needs in an environmentally conscious way, improve the site's resiliency to storms, also creating better, safer traffic flow, removing additional uses on the site that are not water dependent, and creating a safer space for our employees while all increasing access to the waterfront, which is frankly a really good thing. So we identified the best uses or what we were doing currently that we could adapt or grow on. So the racks are easy. They're environmentally the most sustainable way to achieve our needs as well as environmental needs to be able to grow a little bit to make these projects feasible. It would be amiss to think that we could just make all the improvements without trying to have some revenue go along with it. The racks are the best alternative to closed storage buildings when it comes to being in a floodplain. These racks are completely open. If there was a flood, we would be there's nothing in the way. If a flood comes in, it comes in and it goes. Today, those buildings would end up in the lagoon. Not only is that area, so the best part about moving those buildings from where they are and getting rid of them is being able to put the racks there and get rid of those buildings in the floodplain. But also because they're closer to the waterfront, that saves us time moving equipment around. So the equipment doesn't have to drive as far, we use less fuel. But it also allows us to move away from the wetland and increase our buffer zone from that wetland, the Bass Creek that exists behind us. So when we're doing that, also we'll be able to add some additional drainage swales and some native planters and beach grasses. And like I said earlier, Rosa Bagosa, anything like that native resilient storm resilient coastal planters that will help not only strengthen that wetland area, but eliminate runoff from the site into Bass Creek. So adapting the area where the building sat within racks will open up the space to move our other racks that we have on the site currently. We'll have to move them north, create and put them on engineered footings. And that's important because right now they're just on the ground. Put them on footings, bolted down, increasing their storm resiliency. That area between the racks now becomes an operating area where we can safely and reliably run our forklift, and as well as mark off so people aren't just walking or driving all over it. That impervious surface has its benefits. It ensures that if there is a potential spill, if something did happen on that concrete pad, it can be contained, cleaned, and disposed of properly rather than just going into gravel, which is currently there. The foundation area underneath the racks adds a significant amount of filtered drainage for that. So keeping that from going into the lagoon, which is great. The area close to the road, which is where that building on stilts is, which is part of what we're going to try to remove as well, will open up. It allows us to create a better and safer traffic parking lot, creating a better, safer traffic flow for Lagoon Pond Road. Right now, a lot of people back out of the parking lot into Lagoon Pond Road. It'll almost eliminate that 100%. The new vegetated area or planter, I guess you'd like to call it, along Lagoon Pond Road will not just define the lot, but it'll give the street some character. It'll also add as a vegetation buffer for storm surge and flooding. We're adding nearly 9,000 square feet of drainage to the property. A lot of those being vegetative drainage swales that'll capture nearly all the roof runoff on the property. With the benefit to that is it'll absorb extra nitrogen that's coming off of that and before it ever hits the pond, which is a great thing. The additional rack spaces that we're trying to add requires us to open up staging area in the water. We have to take 10 boats out of the water to handle these new boats. That's a 21% decrease in our wet storage numbers in the summer. And that's a 16% decrease in our in-water boats from our slips and our moorings that sit in the west arm of the lagoon. And those boats sit in the water 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the entire boating season. I would say that is a direct reduction in bottom paint, potential for leaks, spills, discharges, boats that could sink, cleaning supplies that go into the harbor, and bottom shading that happens from boats sitting in the water. There's been a lot of comments about the amount of boats and traffic that go in the lagoon. We've posted it. We have historical use from a program that we use. And over the last 2 years, which are COVID years, super high use, we've calculated that only an additional 4 boats per day will end up in the lagoon. Also, there's been comments about more traffic in the east arm of the lagoon or the east side of the lagoon. A lot of our members have attested that they rarely use the lagoon proper. They go from the marina in the no wake zone, out under the bridge and back to the marina through the no wake zone, through the channel. Rack storage, if no one's looked it up, has a ton of benefits for the environment. Rack boats do not sit in the water except when they're being used. They do not require bottom paint. They're checked for leaks at each haul and launch. If there's issues, we do not put them in the water, honestly. They're primarily cleaned out of the water. We rinse them down outside of the water over our contamination or our pressure washing pit, keeping cleaning products from the water. They can't sink if they're in the racks. They can't pose a threat to property if they're in the racks. They can't discharge waste when they're being in the racks. They can't discharge fluids while sitting in the racks. They don't allow liveaboards or overnighting or loitering on your boat in the marina. All of that greatly reduces actual and any potential impact that they would have on the environment. Boats today are not, I want to take a couple of minutes here to address a few public comments, and actually one was tonight. So on the size of the boats that we have on the site, and the size of boats that this project might attract, how they might affect the bottom, added pollution that would come from the boats. The racks that we have and that we're trying to build are limited in their capacity of weight, width, and height. We currently work with already the maximum size boat we will be able to store in the new racks. It's a 34-foot regulator. It has 3 motors. They're 300s. The boat is 38 feet length overall. It weighs about 18,000 pounds. We don't have 2,000 horsepower boats in the marina. We can't go any bigger than that length, and we're not planning on going into that length. It's just not physically possible for the marina. The size and space limitations kind of cap it. Comments also surrounded worries that the bigger boats will draw more water, cause more turbulation, sediment disruption, and have negative effects on the shellfishing beds that abut the channel. That 34 regulator draws no more than water than a 25-foot regulator, boats that we already have. The third engine, I would say, does little to no added turbulation effect at no wake. They're in a no wake channel, in and out of the marina, in and out of the channel until they get to deeper water of the lagoon. And I would say most of them are going at no wake through the bridge. Boats today are probably the most environmentally sensitive they've ever been. They're not the 2 strokes a day of the past are almost 100% gone. 4-stroke technology has advanced over the last few years, and in the last 20 really, but in the last few years, leaps and bounds. EPA has massive limitations on emissions. I mean, if you could walk by the marina, any of the boats sitting in the marina, you're not going to see oil leaking from them like you did 20 years ago. They're clean. And that goes into the marinas and the boat yards as we have to operate today. I mean, the amount of different regulatory boards that we operate under, DEP, EPA, MEPA, CZN, DMF, just to name a few. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, marinas are not what they were, and they're not what they are painted to be. Safe Harbor takes it to the next step, though. They've mandated clean marina certification at all of our sites. We've mentioned this and it's submitted, but we are going to be the first Massachusetts clean marina site in Massachusetts, I believe, which is great. We're piloting wetland restoration projects. We're requiring implementation of advanced best management practices, or SOPs, BMPs, whatever you like to call them, that aim at protecting the waterway and the environment that we operate on. We're really not what we've been painted. Our impacts to the waterway are not what they've been said. We operate on the premise of protecting our resource, the waterway, which is the basis for our business. As I said before, if we didn't have the nice environment, the guys wouldn't want to go on their boats. It'd be not nice. If you look at the history of Lagoon Pond, though, the last 30 or 40 years, the health of the pond has decreased. But the facts aren't pointing to boats. They're pointing to housing development and septic systems. And that's a fact. The offers that we've given to provide funding for seeding the lagoon will help boost shellfish that can help breed, brood, clean the water of the lagoon. In conjunction with that, we've been working with our coordinator already and talking about a marsh rehabilitation study, a feasibility study to see if the marsh that we own to the east of the marina and that area it'd be feasible to put in a program to help rehab or mitigate that area of the marsh and potentially at least strengthen it and stabilize it. So it's vital for years to come. We've also committed to work with local groups, whether that's the town or even the LPA. Yesterday, we got to sit down with the LPA, a couple of board members, and we had a really good line of conversation about communication about our role together of how we can together improve water quality and get together to do that. We had a lot of great ideas, and we are looking forward to partnering with them about how we can do a better job together and not separate, getting the goal of cleaning the pond up. Other things we've offered, and people have made comments about this, there is a no wake zone in the west arm of the lagoon already. There's a very well-defined channel, but we're looking to add a 4x3 no wake sign to the entrance to the west arm. It would have no wake zone, headway speed only, shell fishing area, be cautious, stay in the channel, along those lines. We're significantly improving the site's drainage. We're removing runoff and also removing runoff from Bass Creek. We're removing 10 boats out of the water. We're removing non-flood resistant buildings from a floodplain and also increasing our buffer zone from the wetlands. Along with all that and our SOP changes that we've implemented, I think significantly outweigh the potential impact of 4 boats in the lagoon each day. And I request that you approve this project as we filed it. And I would say, on a side note, there's been some conversation about, what happens if I leave? I know I've been a big voice of this. I will say, I'm trying to raise my 2 boys here. They're 3 and 6, so I don't have really anywhere to go. I own a house here that's on family land. I can't sell it, so I'm stuck here. But that being said, if I moved up within Safe Harbor and still lived here, which was really cool, is I got to work with the CEO, Baxter Underwood, on our slides that we presented as part of a recap of our social and sustainability report. He had a direct hand. He knows what's going on here. He's involved with this. As I said, this comes from the top down. It doesn't come from me singularly. This is something that the whole company takes and prides in, frankly. So I just want to say thank you guys again. I know you spend a lot of time here, so.
Thank you, Chris. If you have those remarks in writing and you would like to submit them to Alex so that we can, because they were lengthy, we will have an opportunity to review them. You're welcome to do that. I'm
In
going to
fact, I would encourage you to do that, Chris.
Sure. Thanks, Joe.
Because it was obvious that you gave a great deal of thought to your closing remarks, and we appreciate that. What I'm going to do is close the public hearing, but leave the written record open for a period of 2 weeks to give Chris an opportunity to work with staff to finalize offers and to address particularly the point raised by Ben Robinson regarding what, if anything, safe harbors might be willing to do to work with the town on permitting for the bike path easement through the wetland. You're never obligated to do anything, but it will give you plenty of time to work that out and consider with your higher ups and if need be your attorneys as to what you're able to do to help the town with that. So that's it, and then we'll go on to post public hearing. If you think you can get it done in less than 2 weeks, I'm happy to shorten it to 10 days or something like that. What do you want to do?
I think that's fine. 2 weeks.
Okay, we will do that.
Doug, I wasn't sure whether he answered all of Greg's questions, but they're in writing and
Yeah.
Lucy will send them. So those also.
Yeah, if you look at the planning board's letter, and to the extent you have not already responded to points raised, that's what I think you should focus on. Okay? Got it. Thank you very much, Chris. The written record will close on what's 3 + 14 is 17. So at 5 p.m. on November 17th, and then we'll schedule post-public hearing, review, and deliberation. Thank you. Okay. 9.
So before we go on, can we just take a little, we don't like to, I'm asking for some guidance here. We don't like to divide deliberation up between 2 nights. We have an hour left. I don't know, Doug, what do you got?
Well, I don't know, Alex. North Bluff is next. That had a great deal of testimony from the public last time. They have made some adjustments. And we have, even now, 50 people participating in this Zoom, and they're not all commissioners. What do you think?
I mean, I'm just asking for, I don't know what to do.
Lucy, do we have people signed up?
We have 2 people signed up to speak on North Bluff.
Brian?
Go ahead, Brian.
I think we should listen to North Bluff. I think they made some changes in relation to the concerns the commission had. And I don't think it's a long discussion.
Hope not.
Yeah, okay, we'll do North Bluff, and then Joan, you can make a call as to whether or not we can get Mashaka done tonight.
Okay, great.
North Bluff. This is the continued public hearing of DRI 659M, North Bluff modification. Alex, let me see, the last public hearing on this was the 13th of October. Tell us what's happened since then, please.
Okay. So in response to concerns and comments that came up on the 13th, the applicant revised the proposal to relocate the tour bus parking and make some other changes in response to commissioner and comments from the public, which I'll show. We also have response to commissioner questions about the bus parking location, also where rideshare parking will take place, parking enforcement, landscaping, and other things. Again, this is the 2 properties involved here on the North Bluff. existing conditions. I'm just gonna breeze through this because we've been through it already. More existing. So this is the new proposed site plan. So you can see that the tour bus parking has been moved. It was back here along Seaview Ave extension. Now it's west of the roundabout. This area where the bus parking had been will remain as 2-hour parking, which it is currently. So the tour bus location is one change. They also added some 15-minute spots in response to commissioner concerns about there not being enough 15-minute spots. That also entailed some minor landscaping changes. They've also redesignated some of the areas that were just for taxi, are now taxi and active pickup drop off. So sort of mixed use going on there. And then the tour buses now will have to come in through Circuit Ave extension because they don't have enough space really to get around this part of the area. So buses would come in this way and then come out Seaview Ave extension. That freed up some space within the roundabout to add additional drop-off parking spaces up here. So those are the main changes that were made since last time, and the applicant provided a document explaining the rationale for that. These are the existing conditions, which we saw last time with the parking uses and then the turning movements. And then proposed. So I went through all that already. I'm sorry, that was the previous and proposed. This is the proposed. And then, so that adjusted the overall mix of proposed parking spaces, but overall, it's really not much of a change from the existing number of parking spaces. The mix has changed based on the plans. Just counting the spots, it looks like a reduction of 1 space overall. That accounts for the increase in these drop-off mixed-use spaces, which would be for rideshare and other uses. Reduction in the 4-hour parking spaces, increase in the 15-minute spaces, etc. So that's all laid out here. And they also provided revised turning radiuses for a fire truck, bus. This is how the bus would come in Circuit Ave and then out Seaview Ave. And a pickup truck for the loading zones are shown here. They had considered whether they could move the bus location to this side of the roadway. Doing that would require moving that location farther in towards the harbor. So that would sort of impede or infringe on the staging area for the queuing area for the ferries, because that would require a larger turning radius. So this was the option that they didn't want to do. And that's it. I would let the applicant add anything if I overlooked anything. Oh, also just to run through the applicant's response to commissioner questions. So they did clarify that there are no shelters for pedestrians proposed in order to preserve views and reduce maintenance. They did point out that shelters would be subject to potential damage from winds and storm. They clarified that rideshare vehicles will be allowed to use any of the spaces that are marked as active pickup and drop off, as well as mixed use. The proposed sitting wall would be reclaimed granite, which was confirmed by the applicant. Landscaping would be responsibility of the town. And there was a question about idling. State law currently prohibits idling in most cases, unless idling is required in some cases, but and generally the state outlaws or prohibits idling. So the applicant plans to pursue ways to limit idling on the property, including specifying in its RFPs with tour bus companies that idling is not allowed. So I'll hand it back to you, Doug.
Okay. I'm just looking for, I'm not seeing here. I know the applicant must be here. Where is?
Tim is here. And Deborah is here.
Okay, Tim. Tim, would you like to, Tim Wong, you're the representative of the applicant here, would you like to expand on this or highlight the changes you've made or the reasoning for not making changes? Or are you satisfied with what Alex said?
Hi, I think Alex did a very good job in summarizing everything. I'm here also with Deb Potter and Ryan Bruley from the town, so they can also chime in on if there are questions more on the town usage and enforcement, things like that. But yeah, we wanted to respond to some of the concerns of at the previous public meeting. And yeah, we primarily to give more parking while maintaining the general geometry and the aesthetic goals for the project. Moving the bus lane, we provided a preferable place for the buses, especially for the whole general public, to not have the buses block the view, but also for the direct abutter on Seaview Avenue. And yeah, I think the biggest move is that we wouldn't be changing the Seaview Avenue 2-hour parking, except for adding a crosswalk. And I guess at one point is that the changing of the movement of up Circuit Avenue and down Seaview. Seaview is how the current bus company does it. I think it makes sense logically, and it would allow the bus to move in and out of the site simpler and faster.
Okay, Deb or Ryan, would you like to add anything? Or we'll go to the public.
Hey, Doug, Ryan Ruley. I just want to say I appreciate Alex's representation. It was clear and concise. I appreciate Tim working on this and getting right on some of these changes that you all were looking to see. I did have the opportunity to speak to one of the current bus companies that does use one of those spots. And I did make him aware of this new rendering, and he felt that this was much more appropriate than what we had before. He felt it was safer. He felt it was closer for the elderly folks, and he was much more pleased with it. So.
Okay. Deb, would you like to add anything?
I think Mr. Wong and Mr. Ruley and Alex have adequately covered all of the points, so I will forego any additional comment. Other than I hope you approve it, and we appreciate all of your input.
Okay, thank you. Who do we have signed up?
Pete Bradford is first on the list.
Okay, Mr. Bradford, I see you there. You're up.
Folks, how are you doing? My name's Peter Bradford, and I'm the owner of Martha's Vineyard Taxi and Admiral Taxi. I represent 2 taxi licenses on the town of Oak Bluffs. Also online, we have Ed Cizik, who represents Cottage City Cab. And I've had the opportunity to speak with Robert, the owner of Halber Taxi, as well as Jim, the owner of Bluefish Taxi. And just to give a little bit of a background on this, none of us had any input into this plan in any way. All the public hearings on this happened before any of us owned taxi companies in the town. And I just want to speak to a couple safety issues as well as logistical issues. And I'm kind of just taking in a change that happened as well that we just found out about. So to start off, most of the taxi companies on the island and in Oak Bluffs operate vans for taxis. And with the exception of the tour buses, we move more people in and out of this area than any other vehicles. And it represents a large part of our revenue source for our business. So it really concerns us a couple things. The taxi cab island as it's proposed here, the way it lays out, all of the passenger vans load from the passenger side of the vehicle. So as you're parked there, your doors are going to be open and you're loading in the middle of the road on both sides. People tend to congregate outside the taxi a little while they're getting their group together, getting their luggage, getting into the cabs. And basically what's going to happen is the whole area of both of those through traffic lanes are going to be blocked by people waiting or loading or getting in and out of the cabs and the doors open the cab. It's going to block traffic coming in through both of those through lanes around the taxi cab island and create what I believe to be an unsafe situation as far as loading and unloading taxis. It may work in another area where they use sedans for taxis, where they have something similar to this, but here on the island, in order to accommodate the amount of traffic that comes off this ferry situation, we have to use 15-passenger vans, and we have to be able to load multiple fares into the cab, which takes time. And basically what happens to happen is as the boat unloads, our doors are open, ready to load. The people walk up. As they come up with their parties, they congregate, they talk to the driver about how much the fare is, they drop their luggage, they get their whole group, they get in the van, and then we wait for another party or 2 or 3 to get in. And all that's going to be happening right in the middle of the through lane on both sides of that taxi cab island, creating what's really an unsafe situation. In addition, we have a problem in Oak Bluffs, and it happens at the steamship at the top of the hill, that taxis who are licensed in other towns, Vineyard Haven, West Tisbury, or Edgartown, come into the area right as the boat's unloading and pull into the active pickup and drop off area and solicit and take fares that should be going to taxis that are licensed in Oak Bluffs. And this is illegal. And we've been trying to work with the Oak Bluffs police to resolve this situation, but they either don't have the manpower or the willpower to deal with it. Mostly the manpower. The time the boats are unloading, the boats are also unloading at the steamship. All the traffic officers are dedicated to directing traffic coming off the boat, and they don't have the ability to post up an officer down here at the Island Queen to watch what's going on. There are 6 taxi companies in Oak Bluffs, and that's why there were 6 parking spots for taxis at the Island Queen dock. And the reduction of 2 taxi spots is just going to create tension between drivers and eliminate our ability to make a living in that area. What we'd like to request is that the active pickup drop-off area that are against the curb be dedicated for taxis, so that when we pull in there, our doors are going to open against the curb where people can safely unload and offload, and that the pickup and drop-off area be behind us on the island. And that way we can eliminate the ability of out-of-town taxi companies to come in front of us and take the fares that are supposed to go to the Oak Bluffs companies. And so other than that, I'd just like to speak to the fact that I've lived in Oak Bluffs for 35 years. I grew up on Oak Bluffs Harbor. This is a pretty good plan, but just the particular location of where taxis have been placed has created both a logistical and a safety hazard for us to do what we're supposed to do down there. I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay, Peter, thank you. Anyone else signed up, Lucy?
We have Ben Hall signed up, but I just want to let you know that Brian Smith's hand up as well.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I would just like Tim to respond what Pete just proposed. And can we swap the taxi stands over to the active pickup drop-off area, or is there some rationale why that wouldn't work?
Go ahead, Tim.
I don't see why that wouldn't work. It's just a matter of switching them and changing the priorities. I would consider that a minor change.
And can we have 6 spots?
Is there room for 6 spots there or not?
There is if you use the 2 on the circle and the 4 against the curb.
I could leave that to the town. They can chime in too, but that's certainly technically possible. Yeah.
Doug, it's Ryan Rulli. Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Pete, how many spots do you guys have down there now?
6.
Are they full at any given time?
Every time the Island Queen comes in, pretty much, yep.
And are there 6 OB taxi licensed OB taxi companies? That's it?
There are 6, yes.
So Doug, is it okay if I ask Pete a question?
Sure. Well, you can ask a question and Pete can respond to it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Pete, you're looking to have that closest active drop off and then the one behind it. So you're saying that if you got that, then you wouldn't need the current taxi stands that are in the middle.
If
on
we
either
had
side.
the 6 spots along the curb, then the taxi stands in the middle could be active pickup and drop off. And the reality is that we move way more people in and out of there in taxis than actually pull in there in personal vehicles. The majority of the people coming off the Island Queen or the Rhode Island Fast Ferry are foot traffic, they walk. The second majority would be people that didn't get into either taxis or tour buses. Very few people comparatively pull in there in private cars, drop people off or pick people up from the Island Queen and the Rhode Island Fast Ferry. And I would
And
say that
in the interest of just Pete, in the interest of just saving time here, I'm going to help you out here. Tim, do you see any issue with that? Can we change the 2 middle from taxi to active pickup and then give them the 6 in a row working front to back that are tight to the curb?
Yeah, I don't see an issue with that technically. Yeah.
I think we could stipulate to that.
Okay.
Can we stop screen share? So we can.
If we're done with this, we can. All right.
Thanks.
All right. That was nice to resolve something. Okay. I think if Ben Hall's on the call, he's up to testify.
Can you hear me, Doug?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you to the project coordinator and the people in Oak Bluffs that are trying to do their best to retain what they can of the plan and not start all over. But what I'm seeing here are some serious deficiencies and just a lack of real consideration of what was said at the last hearing. Because we have 3 issues that I see now. First is the bus parking. If you were to look at the photographic slide that was presented with the new materials, you can see that there are 38 spots that are sort of within the current area of in front of Jason Liu's house and going over to the end of Seaview Avenue. And it was the photograph that I looked closely at. And then I went and looked at the so-called existing parking layout. And the two seem to be discordant a little bit. In other words, I count 38 parking spots that are within the what I call the Island Queen parking area. And I start that right in sort of off to the front left of Jason Liu's house, where it says 4-hour parking. And there's a gap as you go left from there to angled 4-hour parking. And that open space there is commercial fisherman sort of loading zone that is absolutely necessary, because if you look at the photograph that's provided, you can see commercial fishing boats pulled up right along the dock, and right in front of them is the Island Queen. So if you count the 38 spaces there, and then you look at the parking plan, you'll see an awful lot of those are either 15-minute or just for parking during the active loading and unloading of the boats. Well, the boats come in approximately every hour and 10 minutes. Because it's 35-minute ride, they take about 5 to 10 minutes to offload and unload and reload. So actually it's about an hour and a half. So every hour and a half you have one of these events. Then you have the Rhode Island Fast Ferry that comes in, as best as I recall, it can be as many as 2 times a day, but usually it happens just on the weekends, as I recall, having family right down the street. And you have all of these 15-minute spaces. And what are people going to do in 15 minutes when the boats come in every hour and a half? They can barely get out of their car and walk to look at the water. They can't go to the beach. There's not enough time. They can't go to any business. There's not enough time. There's no purpose for having a 15-minute parking space there, except during the time that the boat comes in and unloads and reloads. And that would be the only time you would need 15-minute parking. So I think all of those parking spaces need to be reconsidered and a parking plan reconsidered for when the boats are coming in and having 15-minute periods then. I don't know how you would do it, but it seems to be a waste of the current parking there where people come in, they park their cars, they get ticketed from time to time, but they're willing to pay the ticket because they need to go somewhere in town. And it's usually at least an hour and probably an hour and a half. And if you're going to go to the beach, it could be a lot longer. So I'm very concerned about the 15-minute, to focus on the 15 minutes. Plus, there's nowhere in the plans that I see for permit parking at night. And as I discussed before, and as Trippy alluded to before at the last meeting, that lot at night is full of tradesmen's vehicles, and they need a place to park. And if that stays in the current manifestation, they're not going to have any parking down there at night. And that's a disaster for the 30+ vehicles that are in there pretty much every night with permits. So I urge you to consider that. And if you look at the photograph again, I want you to look at the photograph and look at, there's cars. You'll see there's, to the left of Jason's front yard, you'll see there's 2 cars that are parked that are now in the proposed parking, blocked completely by the tour bus parking area. That's somebody's driveway. That's a parking area for rental cars that's rented, that actively does business. You'll see there's 2 cars there, and then there's a 3rd car just beyond it that's pulled closer to the building. And that's Ann Betancourt's property. And Ann rents out to a guy, to the A1 Auto Rentals. It's a Vineyard family that runs a car rental agency, and that's where they stage their rental cars. And in behind the 2 cars that are right up on the curb, that's where the Anderson Bike Rental stores a lot of their overflow bikes, and they're accessing that regularly during the day. And if you're going to have buses parked and blocking those entryways, you're blocking not only the rental car ability to do business there, but you're blocking Ann if she decided she wanted to use that garage for her own car. That's her driveway, and now she's completely being blocked in by the tour buses. So this is absolutely a very bad location for the tour buses. It has to be shifted upward somehow to the north and the east and away from the front of her building. And unfortunately, that's going to be right in front of Jason's property. And it looks like they're going to be removing a lot of his lawn area and a lot of the curb area, which may or may not be town property, but it looks like it is from the sketches. So they're going to be removing a lot of his grass in front of his fence and probably cutting into the area, forcing these cars to be pushed even further toward the buildings of the Betancourt property. So I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but it is a grave concern, I'm sure. And I don't know if Ann was aware that this change was being proposed. I haven't spoken to her about it, and I just happened to notice these changes because they were sent to me by Alex today. So those are concerns. So the third thing that I'm concerned about, now that I've hit the 15-minute parking and the spaces, is the way I looked at the total changes in the spaces, and I take the area, because the fisherman's loading area appears to be eliminated in some fashion and pushed more toward downtown along Circuit Avenue Extension. And so that area seems to be wiped out a little bit. It's turned into, it looks like it's shifted to the left and it becomes commercial parking spots. So now you're taking away another 4-hour parking spot. It looks like the angled parking is eliminated, the 4-hour parking along the harbor front, in an effort to try to keep more spots in there. But I noticed, where's my total? I kept it running total of the number of spaces that appeared to be changed. And what I determined was, yes, here it is. There appears to be, with the taxis and active parking pickup and drop off, and I'm not counting all the 4-hour spaces that are to the left of the commercial fishing parking area that's being shifted to the left. But it looks like that there's approximately 21 fewer parking spots. And as I look at it and see a lot of the parking spots that are being used for the pickup, the drop off, for all the green space that is being utilized, around the tour buses, the taxi stands, a lot of those spaces should be given over at night to the permit parkers and not just designated as taxi and pickup drop off only, but should be signaged in a way so that the nighttime permit parkers that I described at first could use those spaces. But if you eliminate around the roundabout, the green space a lot of the green space to the north, and use that active pickup drop off that's now that you discussed and said that the taxis would have that anyway as a pull-up area. If you converted that into 6 pull-in parking spaces all at angles, I think you could fit all the taxis there and not lose several parking spots. You could take the next green space, eliminate that to the right, and make 4 more parking spots there. And then where I see along the seawall, there's a hatched out area that isn't accessed by any crosswalk. And there's at least 2 and possibly 3 more parking spaces that are there.
Ben, you're at 10 minutes. You've got 2 more minutes. There are other people who have to testify.
I thought there were only 2 of us, but at any rate, so
We've got other
I've
things
hit all those
also.
points, and I just think that this thing needs to be wholly reworked. I tried to meet with the people in Oak Bluffs. I reached out to various people, and I never got a response. So, I tried to sit down and give sort of this kind of oversight and input, but the plans were redrawn and submitted to you guys, and I think that they still need a lot of work, and I think it's going to really adversely impact that area and the town. You're losing too many parking spots, and you're losing the all-night parkers, all of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Doug, Ryan Rulli, I can
Go ahead,
respond to
Ryan.
a few of those. So just to address a few of those, as far as the commercial fishing goes, if you notice in this current plan, there are the 3 parking spaces. To the right of that, there's a specific designated area for fishing boat loading. We felt that was important to have that space for those folks. It's still there. It's been moved down a few feet, but it's certainly still there. As far as addressing the tour buses and blocking spaces, you can see on the plan, we've accounted in the engineering plan. So that's what they do for a living. To the left in your screen, you'll see the concrete driveways that are accounted for.
Yep.
We certainly wouldn't design a plan that would block anyone's personal property. So you can see with the tour buses, and prior to this plan, the only update was the exact same space was there. We just put tour buses there instead of a loading zone for active loading for vehicles or taxis. That said, nothing changes with permit parking as it currently is now. We have a system in which we sell permits, and in the summertime, we have those folks park up by the town hall. And then once the season ends, we allow them to use all of those parking spaces at night with their parking permit. So all of those 15-minute spaces you see on your right side of the screen, as well as up towards in front of Jason Lou's near the boardwalk, we allow permitted parking overnight for those folks that commute from off island. So I just want to address a few of those things. They've all been accounted for. We would never allow the engineering firm, as you know, to block anyone's private property. They're all accounted for on this plan. You can see the concrete driveways. There's 4 of them across in front of AA Island Rental. And then the tour buses come up after the Betancourt property and on the side adjacent to the Lou property. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Lucy, is there any other member of the public who's indicated they wish to testify?
So I haven't seen anyone, Doug. Just a reminder, you can wave, you can reach out to me in the chat, you can just talk. But yeah, I'm not seeing anybody, Doug.
Okay, any commissioner questions, or can we close this public hearing? I'm not hearing any. Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing. I'm gonna leave the written record open for 1 week, which, Tim, is that sufficient time to make the revisions to the plan and get them to us and put together any offers that haven't already been fleshed out with Alex, or do you want more time?
I think that's sufficient. I think there's only about changing the taxis, so that's
Yeah.
just relabeling.
You could probably do that in about 30 seconds, but you have a week, okay? We're going to close the written record at 5 p.m. on the 10th of November, and then we will go to post-public hearing review and deliberation. Thank you all. That's it for the public hearings. And Joan, I've left you 25 minutes to do the deliberation of a very complex proposal and review 3 sets of minutes. So you're gonna have to talk really fast. Up. Unmute. There you go.
Let's start. Alex, this is Mashakit. This is the affordable housing development in Edgartown. We're going to jump right into the offers. I hope to get through offers and conditions. I see some hands. Jim Vercruz.
Recused.
Yep, and Ben, recused. Yep.
So
Ben, you got-
before we begin, there's no way we're going to do this in 24 minutes.
I know that, but
Do we want to decide now to extend, or do we want to push this off?
Well, here's what I'd like to do. I think that deciding on, and you all can, jump on me. I think that getting through the offers and conditions, I think we have time if we just keep moving. I don't consider that really a deliberation where we're really assessing the benefits and detriments. I'd like to see how far we get with the offers and conditions. If we can't finish the deliberation tonight, then we can't. But I think we ought to be able to get through the offers and conditions. In my mind, they don't seem that complicated, but that's just me. Brian.
You can extend as far as you want to extend to get this done tonight. It's not unusual. We've done it before.
Right, but there's a limit to, yeah, let's just start, okay? And then we can decide. Okay, we're not going to vote on these individually. We're going to make whatever changes there is a consensus about, and then we will vote on the offers when we get to the end. They'll be a little bit difficult when we get to the choice. Never mind, let's just keep going. Okay, free Wi-Fi equipped with tables. Energy and climate friendly development, that doesn't mean too much, but zero fossil fuels, PV solar panels, 4 electrical charging stations, and conduit for an extension. I don't know whether the record indicates what the intended energy usage is and whether the PV, I don't recall. Are there any comments about number 2? Number 3. 2 fully accessible ADA, and the rest of, and every one of them will be UD designed. Okay, and I just want the record to reflect that when I say something and I move on, that there is no comment, and that I consider that to be a well, I don't have to consider it to be a consensus, not yet. Okay, 36 rental apartments remain rental in accordance with the recorded agreements. Number 5 is allowing tenants to stay if they exceed the eligibility requirements, but they will still have to pay 30% of their gross income.
I like that one. I'll drink to that one.
Okay. Rehabbing Old Mashakit Road to a width that accommodates pedestrian cyclists. Preserving and protecting 4 specimen trees along Mashakit Road. Those were in the plans. Working with the general contractor to protect and preserve as many existing trees within the construction zone as is possible.
Joan, I had a comment on number 7.
Okay.
There are actually at least two places in the record that mention preserving trees along Mashakit Road. One says 3 trees, one says 4 trees, and those are apparently all within the buffer zone. Maybe the applicant could clarify 3 or 4 and whether those are the only trees in the buffer zone.
Yeah. Who's here from the applicant?
Yeah,
Craig?
Craig Nicholson with Affirmative Investments. That was my mistake. The 2 of the trees are right next to each other. So when I looked at the plan the first time, I thought they were 1. So I believe it is 4 is the correct number, and they are in the buffer zone. There were no other identified significant trees within our existing condition survey in that buffer zone.
Does that
Is there
clarify
any
that?
other work? Is there any other work that's happening within the buffer zone?
The driveway and then just a kind of a footpath to the bus stop that we're creating, but no other disturbance beyond that.
Yes, Bill. You're muted. I can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
If this is in the buffer zone and it's outside the disturbed area, why would you have to call out that they're being protected? I thought isn't that a no disturb area?
It is a no disturb area. We wanted to make sure that people were aware that those trees existed and that they would be maintained.
So thank you. Okay. I went through 8, 9, temporary fencing to protect the land to the west, which is conservation land, undisturbed conservation land.
This is the land within the leased area. There's a separate 2.9 acres to the west that this does not refer to.
There are two
That's a
2.9 acres. One is a part of another property owner, and this one is within the acreage of this Mashakit property. Is that correct?
That's not very clear.
Yeah, the 2.9 acres that is part of this offer is within the project area. The other 2.9 acres is outside it, and the town is not going to offer to conserve that.
Right. And it has nothing to do with this. It's completely unrelated to this particular project, although it was mentioned in another project, but it's not related to this 2.9 acres, and it's not related to this commitment here.
Right.
Okay. No fertilizer as part of landscape maintenance, but that's fine. I'm assuming that you may use fertilizer as part of the initial implementation of the landscaping plan. The survey, this was part of the evidence to allow homeowners to select amenities.
Joan, I have a question on 10. If the homeowners in this area decide to put in some sort of vegetable garden area, would they have to abide by the no fertilizer, or is that separate than the landscape maintenance?
Do they, again, question, do they have rights to do what they want with the yards surrounding their property?
Well, if they wanted to put in a vegetable garden and wanted to fertilize for vegetables, this would preclude them from being able to do that.
I think Mashakit Commons is prohibited from doing that, not individuals.
All right, maybe we can think about that in a condition.
Keep note of that, please, Ben. Okay, that takes me to 12, permeable surface under the car and bicycle parking spaces.
Do we need the home ownership units have any area other than the building?
Are you back on the other?
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, are we talking about something that is truly relevant?
We haven't seen any defined discrete yard spaces assigned to units.
Well, would it make sense to clarify this? Craig, and I ask you if this is an appropriate clarification of your offer. But this shall not restrict homeowner use of fertilizer for gardens.
Actually, from our point of view, it would restrict the homeowners from using it. It would be part of our homeowners association rules.
Right, okay.
Oh, we understand it then.
Yep, that's very clear. Thank you very much. I guess that takes me down to working with VTA to service Meshacket Road. And working with the town of Edgartown to expand pedestrian bike paths. I'm going to talk about that with an expanded condition a little bit later. And Meshacket Common, okay, this is the only complicated part of the offer. There are two different offers to deal with the excess nitrogen. Essentially, one of them is to have the town find sufficient quantity of land that they preserve from nitrogen uses. The other one is that they will install nitrogen advanced innovative systems in two properties that flow into the Edgartown Great Pond, although it doesn't say that. Oh, yes, it does.
Actually, well, yeah, we would connect them to the town sewer system.
Right, okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
So could we condition it as either or?
Well, the applicant wanted to have the option, so it would be either or.
Yeah, I think I might have misunderstood Ryan. Does he mean, did you mean either or A or B, one or two? Or did you mean septic system or IAs?
So no, our first option, we would prefer, we will mitigate the nitrogen either way, but our preferred option is to go and find sufficient acreage in partnership with the town. If we are unable to accomplish that, we will commit to converting 2 households, approximately 7 bedrooms, to town sewer and get them off of a Title V system.
Right.
Has anybody evaluated these two options against each other? Like which one actually would equal more nitrogen savings?
I believe based on the calculations, they're equal. In order for us to balance our nitrogen, we would need approximately 8 acres. The same lessening of nitrogen into the Great Pond would be converting 2 households to sewer off of a Title V.
They're both the same.
Yeah, and I would say the advantage of the first one is that you have some unrestricted essentially developable land, which is an added bonus.
And for us, as developing 100% affordable housing, if the town is willing to work with us on this and find the property, that is a cost that does not go into producing these homes.
And these are essentially the same options in our conditions, but with the added proviso that the final mitigation plan in either option will be subject to LUPC review and approval prior to the receipt of a building permit. So an LUPC voted to recommend approval of all of these offers and the conditions we're about to go over.
Thanks, I forgot to ask. Before we, let's go into the, does anyone else have any comments? Yeah, Peter. Can't hear you, you're muted. Still muted.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, good.
I still think that option 2 would have more impact, right? And reduce, if the goal here is to actually reduce nitrogen into the environment as quickly as possible, option 2 would be my preference. Option 1 about, undeveloped property and land, what we're seeing is land being developed, and that we're hoping in the future that future development will include nitrogen reducing usages. But here's a way we can actually condition an impact immediately rather than in the future. My preference for 2 versus 1.
Well,
Okay. Well, let's,
And for the applicant to exercise this, they would have to resolve finding the 8 acres in time to be able to install, if they can't find it, the 2 homes before the certificate of occupancy, right? So that would be the time frame.
correct.
yes.
And I believe the way this is written, it's written so that they could do half and half. In other words, they could restrict 4 acres and convert 1 house if they're not able to get all 8 acres.
I don't think that's the way the conditions are written, though.
Yeah,
I'm
we hadn't
just saying
thought of
the
it
way
that way, but
this,
we
the way
would,
the offer is written,
Yeah.
if you scroll it up, that's what it says.
yes. Which in a way makes sense since they are compatible or, equal in terms of their nitrogen mitigation capacity. So our intent is to find a full 8 acres. That is our intent because obviously it reduces the cost for us to create these already very expensive, affordable homes based on construction costs today and interest rates and everything else. The costs are high. So anything we can do to reduce that is our plan.
Would we want to have any oversight over those 8 acres? I mean, you could get 8 acres of undeveloped land in buffer zones that are not developable and add it all up to 8 acres and say, well, that land is going to be preserved even though it could never be developed.
You would have oversight under the condition as it's written.
Where does it say that?
If you
Oh,
want
under the condition, yeah, okay. All right, so, sorry, let's, oh, God. Taking a vote takes too much time. Everybody keep that in mind, please. We will come back after we look at the conditions. So let's look at the conditions. Right, so that concern, both as to timing and as to the quality of the land is taken care of in number 1. Okay, so the only thing that is not accommodated, the only thing that is not expressly dealt with is whether the option, and I think really the way it's written is the option I would interpret it that it is at the option of the applicant, which does not address Peter's concern. I think that I don't see any hands. Okay, let's see if we can make it through the rest of the conditions.
Number 2 would apply if they chose the second part of.
Second alternative, yes, so I think is implicit. And although the numbers are different, it is, or actually the numbers probably aren't different. This is pretty standard. Okay, let's go on. I think number 4 is already taken care of in their offer. So it's repetitive, redundant. Okay, I'm assuming you guys can read. These are, number 6 is pretty standard. Number 7 isn't unusual. We just haven't had one of these recently. Again, I think that these have been used in other cases. Landscaping is pretty standard, lighting is pretty standard. And is that the end of it, or is there a 14? Yeah, 14. Okay, so I think when it says 14, applicant should provide a survey, blah, 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 prior to receipt of a certificate of occupancy for each unit, or are you talking the certificate of occupancy for the whole kit and caboodle? I think we mean for each unit.
Well, we'll be going for one certificate of occupancy across the entire project is really what we're going
Okay.
for.
Okay, then I
So,
think that's fine.
I
the
mean,
way
it
it's
will
listed.
be on a unit or building by building basis, but really we're
the
getting them all at
project.
the same time.
Yeah, so for the project.
We CO for the project, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Potential additional conditions.
So there was some communications about the one in red and whether it would go to the LUPC or the executive director. We have other things going to the LUPC, so I'm not sure why we would task the executive director with making the call.
We
that
also
condition.
have in Keene's Way, almost, out of the X number of conditions, 20, many of them were referred to the executive director. And here it is, we have done it before. I guess that's my point.
But why do we do it here?
Because they need it for their financing.
But we have a lot of things that need to go
No,
back.
but
to
this
LUPC.
gets right to, well, anyway, you can ask them, but that's why we did it in Keene's Way. That's why we're doing it here, as it gets to their financing. I guess the wastewater stuff is not, but the actual.
But the landscape plan is LUPC, the wastewater is LUPC. I mean, I don't understand the distinction here.
The applicant would need to explain how this affects their financing.
So the way this was written to us the first time, prior to a building permit and this walkthrough, the LUPC would have to have another hearing. They would then be able to make any change they wish to the site plan based on soils and topography and anything that was going on there and vegetation. And basically that would leave us an unapproved project. We would not have definitive building sites. We would not have definitive roads. We would not have definitive utilities. And therefore we would not be able to submit a permitted project to the state for funding.
So, I mean, as I understand this condition, we're not talking about limiting the number of buildings. We're not talking about shifting the roadway. It's more looking at where there are opportunities to potentially move utilities that might be adjusted, or where there's opportunities in the project area where further protection can be added. I don't think we would be getting into looking at rearranging the buildings, saying the buildings need to be shaped a certain way or moved, in any substantial way. So maybe that's just a mischaracterization.
But actually, Ben, you just said move underground utilities, and that is a definitive thing that we have to get construction pricing for and have approved essentially per a set of plans. Now, if we make, as it says, material changes to that, of course, we need to come back for approval. But, to have it open-ended that these sorts of things are still subject to change per a committee, that's not an approved project.
So first of all, I'd like to suggest that it should say any material changes to these aspects of the project, and obviously not the entire project. And let me ask you, Craig, if it said subject to the approval of the MVC executive director, and I'm just asking this, I'm not proposing it, in consultation with the chair, does that
that would be acceptable. The thing that we are really needing to avoid is a new hearing. or an
But it wouldn't
updated
be a
hearing
hearing.
where
I mean, you
things
don't
can
know.
be,
It's just, okay, so in case you don't realize that the LUPC does not actually hold hearings. They hold meetings. They don't hold public hearings. There's no testimony. They meet to discuss things. They're in the vernacular, they're meetings. No, I mean, just, I'm explaining.
yeah, it would put funding at risk. I realize that there's a distinction, that it's not a hearing, it's a discussion in a meeting. I would say that level of uncertainty could impact our funding capabilities at the state. That would be a risk that the state would be looking at in funding a project that could still be reviewed by a convening board.
Okay,
This
Fred.
position is not worth that kind of risk.
I believe the same thing, Doug, and I don't, frankly, I don't think this is something you want a committee deciding. It really is more of a 1 or 2 person job, I think. To get a bunch of people in the mix on this is just not a good idea.
Brian?
Yeah, I guess I don't understand why this isn't part of what's already been presented to us. I mean, this is the project that presented to us.
Because, you know, we always say if you change the project, you have to come in. But what we're saying here is that there's certain kinds of changes that you don't have to come in for, you know, a modification. It can be essentially dealt with by the executive director.
Actually, and slightly different, this is a request from members of the commission to come and tour the site to request changes. It's not us making a change on our own. It is your commission visiting the site and asking us to make changes and then reviewing the changes that you asked us to make.
Yeah, that ship has sailed.
I'm okay, Ben.
So we didn't conduct a site visit. And I think this would give us the opportunity to look within the area of disturbance at opportunity to protect the soils and the existing vegetation. I think we're all reasonable people here. And I think we're overblowing the changes that would be potentially arisen out of this process. And I just don't understand why you can have LUBC review landscaping plans and wastewater and not this and say that this would affect your funding and the others wouldn't. You know, we're talking about clearing a substantial amount of vegetated land, and we don't seem to be paying much attention to that piece of this. And look, affordable housing is a critical issue on the island. I understand that, but we also have to look to protect the natural environment. You know, and I think this doesn't feel onerous. I think we're all overstating what this looks like. If we walk the site and the road is here and there's a pathway and there's an existing tree that looks like it can be saved and we all agree it can be saved, that's the type of things that we would be looking at. When I talk about moving utilities, when you're digging a trench, you can shift the trench a couple feet and it doesn't really change the constructability of it or the material cost of it in any way. And so I'm looking for a reasonable solution to do the best we can to protect as much of the natural environment that we have to admit that we're disturbing here.
Absolutely. And to that end, we're happy to conduct this site walk with you. We're just hoping to keep any material changes that come out of it on a very expedited and more administrative review and approval so that we can move forward with the rest of our project and funding applications. So we're happy to work with you. We've always said we'd be happy to work with you. We're just trying to keep the back half of whatever could come out of that, however minor, could be nothing. But if it is something that is a material change, we're just looking for it to be more of an administrative approval process than opening it back up to a full committee.
And peculiarly, you guys would do the flagging, et cetera. The commissioners come in and they have ideas. And their ideas might constitute material changes. So their ideas are subject to approval by the executive director, who presumably will approve the changes recommended by his commissioners.
It is possible, but we also, you know,
So Ben, are you, is this?
I just feel like, I mean, if I was the executive director, I wouldn't want to be put in that position. You know, you've got commissioners that are saying one thing and you feel like, oh, well, you know, I mean, I just don't understand why this wouldn't go to LUPC as we normally do with any sort of post-public hearing approval.
No.
And I get it. There are times maybe when the executive director can make the call, but this feels like you're going to ask the commissioners, the ones that want to tour the site and look at it, to participate. And then you're going to ask the executive director to somehow negotiate those changes with the applicant.
So let me, I hear you. Let me take,
vote on it. Let's vote on it and get it, move on.
Because I think this
Wait a
is
minute.
micromanaging the process.
okay,
this is-
Kathy, you haven't spoken yet.
That's what I was gonna say. This feels like micromanagement. I mean, it feels to me like we usually would make this a condition that the people constructing the project would pay attention to this or appoint somebody to do this. But why are we walking a property at that point in the process? It just feels like an anomaly to what we usually do.
Okay, and Daryl, did you have something quick to comment on?
Yeah, I just want to put this in context that, you know, we're all in agreement with what Ben in particular is talking about and others as well. You know, if there are opportunities to keep trees that we haven't specifically marked on the plan, we want to do it. So we are all in the same place. We're just trying to streamline the process, keep it simple, as Craig said, keep it administrative. You know, the MVC director, we feel could be a fair arbiter. You know, we trust the executive director and we know you guys do too. So it just simplifies the process. We also suggested previously, and I noticed it wasn't removed from the language, that you know, we could go crazy flagging things on the site, and to flag all the underground utilities, we really feel that if we show the center of the roadway and the building footprints, our plans will show very clearly where the utilities are, and we can have an intelligent discussion. But just to add a quick, so I would just ask that be removed just for simplicity, and it'll save us some money too. But the main thing is, I think it's important to keep in mind here, this is a 6.8 acre lease lot. And we are totally protecting, absolutely protecting behind fences.
The 2.9 acres over there.
2.9 acres. That's 45% of the property. And then within the property, there will be some trees that we can save that we just haven't marked out on the plan. And so we're in the same place, and we feel that if we just, it's a simple process, we can all do it together, and because we're all in the same page.
Why can't we appoint Daryl?
Married to the
Okay, so let's get rid of, let's solve this. I'd like to have them vote on this.
Can we do a motion to extend?
Yes, that would be a very good idea.
I'll make the motion to extend till 10:30.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, all in favor,
Second.
all in favor, raise your hand. And Lucy, you're in charge of scrolling through.
Yep, it looks like everybody except Doug and Kathy. I can't see your hand. And Ernie isn't with us anymore. I can see your hand now. Yep.
Okay. It's extended. I'd like to, I guess I'd like to take a vote on, no, I don't want to take a vote on. God, I guess I'd like to take.
Joan,
Yeah.
I'm the only one that's asking for this. We don't need to vote on it. If this is what the you know, the rest of the commissioners support, then, you know, so be it. And if you want to eliminate underground utilities, you know, go for it.
Okay, so let's, on Daryl's recommendation, let's delete the underground utilities. Okay, and this additional condition is I drafted it. I think it is a little bit clear as to what the applicants has to do, but in addition, it does make it clear that the applicant's not paying for those improvements unless they choose to. But they're not required to. They are simply required to, and it should all, yeah, they're required to cooperate and try to make something happen. It's up to the town as to whether anything happens, but I thought it was a little bit more thorough.
It's
why are
aspirational.
we
It really
doing-
has no effect.
That's exactly right. And the purpose is to send a signal that not only do many members of the public think it's an issue, the commission thinks that the safety is an issue. And it is to signal. It is not something that we have no control over the town.
But why are we keeping the first? Did we decide we're definitely keeping that the MVC is going to review?
Yeah, we're gonna. Well, Kathy, are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that we appoint Daryl. I mean, I'm being funny, but did somebody that's part of the project walk the land? I mean, I never heard of us walking the land to look at whether the soil and the vegetation.
So this is newly proposed for this. This is the first time it's been proposed. The point is that if they indicate what their plans are, we can make a site visit. If there's something that seems like it ought to be changed to further protect the land, then that can be discussed and subject to the approval. And for the certainty of the applicant, it would be the executive director who would basically direct and approve a change.
Why are we doing this at the end of the proceedings? I don't understand.
This came out of the LUPC, so it's not at the end of the proceedings. I mean,
when is this done? When is this? When that's maybe what's confusing. Is it?
This did not come out of LUPC. This was Ben's idea, and we left it to Ben to propose something. LUPC did not propose this.
All right.
Up at LUPC. Came up at LUPC.
It happens prior to the building permit. We never conducted a site visit. Look, we're disturbing undisturbed land. I think we owe it to the land and the natural environment to have some look at it before it goes all away. And that's all I'm asking for.
That's on us for not doing it up front.
I agree with you.
We shouldn't be doing it on the back end, and I would
No.
strike that condition.
Well, it would be a little hard to do it up front, being that it's an undisturbed lot and you wouldn't know where the buildings were located or the road was located. So once the road goes in, or at least the brush cutting happens and the road is staked out, then you'll have a clear sense of what major vegetation may be able to be saved within the building.
No, it could have been flagged and we could have gone and seen it. I mean,
Right, okay, so I am going to take a vote on this, okay? Motion to accept this additional condition number 1. Is there a motion?
Also moved.
Okay. Yeah, who said that?
And
I moved it.
Right,
Jeff
okay,
seconded.
in second, okay. Further discussion. Doug, your hand.
Daryl's pointed out, this is a 6.8 acre lot. They're absolutely protecting 2.9 acres. They're building a heck of a lot of affordable housing. This is a waste of our time. This particular issue in the context of all that happens on this island all the time. I respect Ben's thought, but it's a waste of our time.
Okay, so Ernie, do you have a comment on the motion?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Hold on one second. Yes, I do. Okay. I think, I don't think this is a good idea because I think this in the contract, in this agreement may impact their ability to get the funding they need. I agree with that. This ship has sailed. I think that we have to trust them, and I think they are trustworthy, that they're not just going to go
rip the place up and do whatever they want. I think they're going to take precautions that we can ask them to take.
Okay, so let's have a roll call, please. A yes vote means you would like that condition to be a part of the conditions imposed by the commission in the event that we approve this project. Quick, smart roll call vote, please, Lucy.
Fred Hancock,
No.
Kathy Newman,
No.
Kate Putnam,
No.
Doug Cedarholm,
No.
Jeff Agnoli,
Yes.
Brian Smith,
No.
Peter Wharton,
No.
Jay Grossman. Jay, you're muted.
Yes.
Trip Barnes,
No.
Ben Robinson,
Yes.
Ernie Thomas.
No.
I think that's everybody except Chair John Malkin.
I would say no. What's the count? I'm pretty sure it's defeated.
A lot of no's to 3 yeses.
Okay, Kathy, your hand is up.
I just wondered if, just to satisfy those who were rightly protecting the land, could we have a condition that sort of puts onto them, I keep being funny when I'm saying Daryl, but I know him and I know he would do the right thing, but to make a condition, just that the land would, that as much vegetation would be saved as possible. I mean, just something so that we've got it in there that we're concerned about the land, but hand it to them. They're a reliable group of guys.
I would go so far as to say, I think they know that we care already.
Well, I'm just thinking of it in terms of decisions that we write and letting everybody know what those decisions are based on. That's all.
Let's let the written decision reflect this issue without making it a condition.
Okay. Fine.
Okay, so we've gotten to the point where we have read through all of the offers. I didn't hear anything that suggested that we need to have further debate on it. Although as I said, I believe that the condition on working with the town of Edgartown should be substituted for the offer that they had on working with the town of Edgartown for safety. I think we could probably deal with this in one single motion. Who'd like to make one? Fred?
Joan, I think that we haven't really made a decision about the wastewater issue.
Yes, that's correct. So what we need to decide is whether or not we want to make it at the option of the applicant or whether we select the option. Fred?
I say I could go either way, but I think it's important to say once again that this is an affordable housing project, and the important thing is for the town to get as much bang for the buck as they can out of the funds that they've raised for this. And they're not running roughshod over the water policy. So I think giving them the option is not a problem. So I would vote for letting them have the option.
I'll second that.
Second.
Okay, and so what essentially that would mean that the introductory sentence from the condition would be the prelude or whatever it's called to the introductory sentence from the offer would be the prelude to these 2 paragraphs that are under 1.
Yes.
People following me? I guess so. Kathy, do you still have your hand up?
Well, I just didn't want the project to be, I wanted to give them the ability in case one didn't work to do the other one.
And that's what it says there. That's why I said that.
Yeah.
So we would not accept the options as they have it. In other words, we would not accept 15 if this is the motion. And instead we would we would have the condition as proposed, and Alex will put in that introductory language. there.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. You know, you'll have to make them options 1 and 2 or A and B or something like that, Alex. But having said that, which he can fix, is there a motion with respect to the offers and conditions as we've now clarified?
I would move that we accept the offers except for the except for the
15.
water quality that we're, 15, that we're working on here, and replace it with our condition 1.
And also you said number 4 is already an offer, so what do you want to do?
Yeah. I think we could eliminate it.
Yeah.
And you're including adopting the conditions, right, Fred?
Yes.
Yeah, so your motion went to both offers and conditions, and the only change that you recommended was that their last offer on nitrogen be substituted or not accepted, and our condition on nitrogen would apply. And Fred, I just want to ask you, do you have a preference as to what we do with respect to the working with the town?
On the
Part of your offer, because it's a proposed.
The
Yeah.
final proposed condition.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I think it sounds like we don't think the town of Edgartown knows how to take care of their own pedestrians and bicyclists. And if I were in Edgartown, I would find that somewhat offensive.
I will withdraw it.
I agree.
Me too.
And I
would
second
actually
what-
say as a resident of Edgartown that they don't know how to take care of their pedestrians and their bicyclists. So
That's something you need to work on there then.
Okay,
Moving
so.
right along.
I second
Yeah,
on
we've got a
Fred.
motion and a second. Jeff, do you have a comment on this motion?
Well, it already passed me by. I was gonna ask. I'm gonna comment that there's good reasons to include that last condition, partly because of just what Kate mentioned. The town
Okay,
is
so
not
just-
getting to this, and I feel that if we were to include it, it would help greatly in getting some long delayed project completed along that road.
Just so
That's all.
that you know, there is an offer. The applicant has an offer to work with the town to improve Meshacket Road. Alex, can you drag that up quickly?
So what did this add other than the last sentence, Joan?
I thought that it's just a wordsmithing thing I like to
Okay.
do sometimes.
As long as language remains in to help
Yes,
along.
so that was part of the offers that would be, that is included in the motion.
Yes.
Okay, any
Understood.
further comments on that motion?
It's,
Did you want to say something, Brian? Did I hear you?
well, it's a condition that has no teeth.
No, we're not doing the condition,
Has no
Brian.
their offer has no teeth either, okay? So let's
Right.
just face
And
it.
she withdrew the conditions, so we're
Yeah.
gonna vote on the offers and conditions as Fred modified.
Okay, let's go for it.
Okay, let's start with Jay Grossman,
Yes.
Kathy Newman,
Yes.
Peter Wharton,
Yes.
Ernie Thomas,
Yes.
Trip Barnes,
Yes.
Kate Putnam,
yes,
Ben Robinson,
Abstain.
Fred Hancock,
Yes.
Jeff Agnoli,
Yes.
Doug Cedarholm,
Yes.
Brian Smith,
Yes.
and double checking. I think that's everybody except for Chair Joan Milken.
Yes, okay, it's now 10:23. I do not want to be rushed during deliberation when we go through the benefits and detriments. I think that's very important part of our job. I think we need to think very carefully so that we are rendering a complete and thoughtful decision. So I am not going to do that tonight. I don't want to start it because that would be a mistake. But we have this in our back pocket. We know what the offers and conditions will be should we determine to approve the project. In 6 minutes, let's see if we can get through any of the minutes.
Can I make a suggestion just before you do that?
Yes.
That on the next week, we have the Look Street deliberation. I believe that this should go first before that, since we're in the middle of it. Do you have any objection
Not at all. I would like it to be first.
to that going? And then
Next week, then something else is gonna get pushed off until the 17th, so we'll have to shuffle things around.
All right, so we can do this on the next week. Okay.
Okay, we're going to do it. We'll just have a lot of work to do. We're going to get through it. We now have 5 minutes. Alex, can you drag up any of the minutes?
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, I, as always, am assuming that you have read it. And if you had comments, that you would have given your comments to Lucy or Alex or Adam. So let's casually stroll through these minutes. And I think we can probably go reasonably quickly. No, sorry, keep going. In fact, stop for just a second. Does anyone have any comments on these minutes? No. The second set of minutes, Alex, what's the date for those?
September 1st.
Are there any comments on the September 1st minutes? Shout, raise your hand, do something. Nothing.
I think I have to go find my the right piece of paper.
Okay.
These are 25 pages long.
Yeah, there were a couple of issues on this because I didn't print it out. That it's on my screen here, as I recall.
If we vote on them as a bunch, Joan, what do we do?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I wasn't there for one. How do I abstain if we're voting as a bunch? That
It'll
was
be
all.
okay. We'll just count you for the ones that you're eligible. for.
Okay.
You're not the only one that is gonna have a problem.
Okay, so I don't,
Yeah,
Fred, are you dragging it up or something?
Yeah, I'm dragging through it, but you know, they were nothing particularly momentous.
Could you send them to when you find them to Alex or Lucy?
Yeah.
Were they substantive or simply administrative in nature?
Yeah, maybe some of them were covered by further remarks later.
Okay, so I'm not gonna go
Yeah.
through this. I'm gonna ask if you could send your comments to Alex that will
Yeah.
appear in red line in the next version. So we have only one set so far. The third set, did you have any comments on the third set? Did anyone have any comments on the third set?
Which is September 8th, just a heads up.
September 8th. Okay, I see nothing. I would accept a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion, we accept all three with the changes that Fred has found that he will give the staff.
Non-substantive changes, which do
Yes.
not change the import.
No.
of
I'll second that.
Okay. Lucy knows who's eligible to vote. That is, if they were there.
I'm just gonna
so-
call on everybody and we'll figure it out. There's plenty
Yeah.
of people here.
Thank you. Thank
Sort
you.
it out in the wash.
Okay, let's go.
Christina Brown. Christina, you're muted.
Oh, come on,
Yeah,
Christina.
thumbs up. Jay Grossman.
Yes. Yes.
Kathy Newman.
Yes.
Ernie Thomas.
Yeah.
Trip Barnes.
Yes.
Kate Putnam.
Yes, for the one I made it to.
Yep. Jeff Agnoli.
Yes.
Doug Cedarholm.
Abstain as to all three.
Oh, Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I forgot that I was abstaining all the way from the beginning and now. So please cancel my vote.
Okay.
Ben Robinson.
Abstain.
Brian Smith.
Yes.
Peter Wharton.
Yes.
Fred Hancock.
Yes.
I think that's everybody except Chair John Malkin.
Yeah, I'm going to vote yes, but I noticed there were 3 abstentions, and I want to know if that is a function of the process that we use to approve these, or if there's some other thing that I should be aware of.
I'll speak to mine. Mine is, I think one of the other commissioners uses the word recuse themselves. Was that the technical one I should have used? That is, I won't participate in the discussions or the votes in order to avoid any possible appearance of a conflict of interest because I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee.
If
What?
you're talking about the Mashakit one, you can still vote on August 25th and September 1st. So
This is
we're
for
voting-
minutes.
you just wouldn't be voting on September 8th, and you wouldn't be voting on that one section of September 8th. So you can still vote.
These are just minutes, Christina. There's not a deliberation that you need to recuse yourself. But you're free to do it. You're muted, so I can't hear you, but you're free to do as you choose.
I think she's all right with it, John.
Okay, and so Ben and Doug, is there something I should be like concerned about, or is just your choice to abstain?
I'm not comfortable with the way we did it. I understand, and I think I just would rather not.
Okay. Ben?
Yeah, yeah, same.
Okay, well, I hate operating under a time pressure, and I apologize for how we did it. I hope we don't have to do it this way again. My apologies. I can't stand when we get to the end of a meeting and we're desperate to finish. It's really, really frustrating for me. We need to do this better. Thanks very much. Good night. And see you next
week.
See you next week.
Thank you, Lucy.
Yeah, you're welcome, everybody. Have a good night.